Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 357 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a good Tuesday.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. But before we get to that, we have a couple of incredible things, unbelievable things that we have to cover before we even get into the news. Starting off, the fundraiser from Sunday was unbelievable, even with the glitch. And of course, many of y'all who were there that night know about the glitch where nobody was listed off individually for helping to support that fundraiser except for moderators from this channel. We were able to raise, as the Lee Spring Army, $13,450 in support of the nonprofit Save the Children. Unbelievable. It actually went up. We couldn't even hear that, but it actually went up.
It cut out.
$300 from when our stream even cut off. Another $300 came in. We cannot even accredit the exact numbers and details of who did what that night, but I can guarantee y'all this. That is definitely helping to save hundreds of children in Ukraine, and whether y'all's names are known or not, y'all's impact on how those children's lives will unfold from here forward will definitely be felt for generations to come. And I've got to thank every single one of y'all who was there that night to help us with that fundraiser, because while y'all were not named out individually, no one will ever forget the help that y'all have given to Ukraine. A second thing I'd like to bring up is that many of y'all may remember that we publicized heavily that we had a P.O. box, and if you ever want to send fan mail, you could send it to that very P.O. box. We actually got a little bit, we've been getting a couple of things here and there from y'all, and they've been absolutely fantastic. We've got some property of the Lee Spring Army ammo boxes from one viewer. I don't know if he wants us to mention him or not. If you do, I know who you are. Let us know in the live chat, and if you can find him, Matthew, let me know what he said. And also today, we got something that is really blown Matthew and me away. We got this little, it's like these beads, like these plastic beads, and they come in different colors. And this guy made an incredible portrait of Volodymyr Zelensky with these beads. And you know who you are. It's Keith Does Things. I know he's in here right now. We received your mail, and that thing is impressive. And just to let all of y'all know, if your fan mail arrives in time before the podcast on February 24th, which we also have to cover here in a second, and it is really something we are going to be putting up in the background of the set if we still have the room. I don't know how many things will come in, but the property of the Lee Spring Army ammo cans will be on camera in our set. We'll also have the President Zelensky portrait on our set in the background. It's incredible stuff. Honestly, it's really, really cool. And Matthew, I know you have some comments to throw in about that because you were the first one to see it, and that thing blew us both out of the water.
Yes, it was super cool, Keith. And also, thanks for sending it. I did pick it up at the P.O. box today, and I was shocked to see something that large in the box. But every time I look at something that's like a user like created art, like a viewer, I think, how do they come up with this? It's just so artistic and creative. I'm just not minded like quite that creatively. So when I saw it, I was just blown away. Very, very creative.
It was so creative. Like, we were really blown away. And also, I just saw that Jay Bagwell gave us permission to call him out and his family. They were the ones who made... Call him out. They were the ones who made the property of the Lee Spring Army ammo boxes. They made 2 of them, and holy moly, I got to thank both of y'all. We will, of course, get to that in the question segment. The chat's turning red. But they were, the Bagwell family pretty much was the ones who sent the ammo boxes that say property of the Lee Spring Army on them, and they are so freaking cool looking. And even then, they put like these foam inserts in them where you could put a pistol in them and some magazines. It's really well done. And we had never really got the moment to properly call them out, but we'll be able to call both of them out on the podcast because those things will be in the background of our set while we run that fundraiser on February 24th. And we've been able to confirm this. The podcast will be running on February 24th, and we have 2 guests that are definitively lined up. Well, actually, I believe 3, but one is kind of iffy. Sadly, it's Starsky because he's, I believe, been deployed at the moment, so it's really hard to get him on a stream because he's out in the field. But we have Ukraine Matters, a really good channel, really great one. And we also have Dennis Davidoff coming on as well. Both of them have been confirmed, and they will be on that podcast that night, helping us to fundraise for Doctors Without Borders. So it's going to be incredible, absolutely unbelievable. But with that, I'm not gonna give y'all the news of what's going on in this channel any longer, because y'all are here for the massive bits of news that we have tonight, coming out of Russia and also coming out of the rest of the world. Starting off with Russia first, because the things that we've been hearing are actually somewhat concerning and evolving at a very interesting pace in Russia is that there has been a fire at the research institute that is developing a lot of Russia's military technologies, and we've had a video, and there are several different videos and sources out there, but we only included the one. This one is the one that helps to create, I guess you could say, the targeting systems for the Iskander missiles, and it's caught on fire. As you can see here in this clip, Russian fire trucks have pulled up alongside, and they're trying to extinguish the flames, but it appears that the damage to the factory has been incredibly extensive. And we can see the fire continuing to rage right there as the firefighters just kind of shuffle around to the bottom of the building. They're not really moving with a lot of speed, so I think the Iskanders will sadly be put on pre-order from here forward. That's the end of that clip, but once again showing the damage being caused to Russia's cruise missile industry has gotten quite severe, and from what we currently know, they're not even able to produce any additional missiles because they're lacking a lot of the vital systems that they had to import from the West to keep these things running, so even then, this factory was largely inconsequential, but now, nicely enough, it has burned down to the ground. So we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of news, because I'm saving the biggest one for last. The one in the title will be covered here in a second, though. Moving on to our next one, we also saw a Russian research institute on fire. This institute does most of the development and production work for radio control systems used by the Russian military, and we can see that one on fire as well. Someone needs to call Smokey the Bear, because apparently the Russians don't understand anything about fire prevention, because not only did a cruise missile factory burn down to the ground today, but also a research institute. Now, it doesn't seem to be a massive deal that research institutes burn down, at least on the surface, because in the end, one could always argue that these are trying to develop further technologies that are just trying to catch up to Western radio and communication systems, so that's not big of a deal. However, usually the original prints of any current technology or prior technology used by Russian military is usually held at a research institute like this. And so, knowing Russian incompetence, they may have just lost the ability, and they're going to have to try and figure it out again on how to make certain communication equipments possible. Once again, that's a fairly big stretch, because we don't know what kind of information was held within that research institute and what exact communication systems they were working on. But now it's time for us to move on to the biggest news of the night that came out of Russia. Apparently, from what we've been told in initial reports today, on Valentine's Day of all days, the romance in between Prighozin and Vladimir Putin has sadly ended. On the one day that it shouldn't have, on Valentine's Day. Today is a day of love, Matthew. And we're seeing the largest amounts of hate apparently occur in Russia, or at least the worst breakup we've ever seen, as the mentions of Wagner and Prighozin have been banned off of Russian state TV today.
That's like the epitome of Russian love.
Russian love.
Banning people off TV,
So,
throwing them out of windows.
so interestingly enough, Mr. Nutsack has now been banned off of mention from TV, and also his famed little unit. And we'll be getting to the Bakhmut area as well here in a second, and talking about the Wagner unit in a little bit more detail, because it appears that they're absentee, and we'll get to that in a minute. We'll start to explain that in greater detail, but the fact that the Wagner Group and Prighozin have been banned from being mentioned on state TV inside of Russia shows one of two things, and these are the two most plausible options I've come up with. Either there was a failed coup attempt, like this title is mentioning, and the Russian government is quietly trying to suppress it and then have this guy fall out of a window and make sure the Wagner Group is thoroughly disbanded and spread across the country, or Prighozin, in one form or another, has fallen out of Putin's favor, much like many generals who have commanded the Ukrainian theater have come and gone throughout the war. He may be going through that similar phase, and Russia's most beloved chef will finally be the one on the fryer and getting cooked. So, either way, apparently the Wagner Group is disappearing, so that's good to know. And it's great to hear that they've been banned off of mention from Russia state TV, because for the longest time, they've been worshipped by the Russians, and now it seems that the Russian government will be, again, to demonize them in the public eye and try and get this guy and his sad, decrepit-looking face out of the television screens. One last bit of news, though, in Russia. A lot of y'all have been hearing about the battles of Volodar, and of course we'll be getting to that a little bit later tonight, because once again, losses are as high as ever. But one thing that y'all have very much well heard is that the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade, that it comes all the way from Vladivostok, all the way in the far east of Russia, as far as one can really get in terms of populated areas, right out here, was brought from the far east to Ukraine to fight in the area of Volodar, and they had taken heavy losses, and they had routed off the field the last time we were on stream on Sunday. Well, funnily enough, the remainder of the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade had a homecoming today, Matthew. They came home, and we got to see the festivities surrounding it. Do you want to see what this looks like, Matthew? Because I think you're not ready for it.
I'm probably not ready for it, but let's see it.
Oh, you're not. They came home. Man, look at that homecoming.
Ну вот, город Владивосток. Морское кладбище.
Oh, it's loading.
Ребята,
Oh, the computer can't even handle it.
Man, that's a great homecoming. You can see a lot of the guys made it home. Man, they even came home with a box. You know, we don't have the exact details behind who did what and whose soldier was doing what job in the 155th, but one thing's for certain, their tanks will also be buried somewhere else, probably not in Russia, probably within the fields of Ukraine, or be sold for scrap, as many of the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade's vehicles are still sitting in the fields outside of Volodar, charring to a crisp.
And do we know if these are conscripts or are these soldiers that voluntarily joined the military?
Most of Russia's units always consist of conscripts, especially at the lower levels. So if you had to say on like a Western equivalent, their privates and corporals will almost always be conscripts on like a 2-year contract where they're mandatorily having to serve. Anyone above that, like a sergeant, or I believe they're called a Starsina or something like that. Anyone above that will most likely be there on their own choice. They'll be contract soldiers at that point, and their officers are usually on contracts as well. So most of these guys are probably conscripts, whether it was during the partial mobilizations from earlier or the normal conscriptions that occurred throughout all of Russia's history. Most of these guys are, I guess you could say, poorly trained at best, even if they joined this unit before the war. But you also have to remember the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade is considered a high step above the rest of the Russian army. These are considered the elite of Russia's forces, and it's had a very distinguished military history, at least during Soviet times, during the Second World War, the war in Afghanistan, and any other conflict they found themselves in. So this, while still being poorly trained by Western standards, is one of Russia's cream of the crop units that we're seeing laying 6 feet under the ground.
Yeah, I've got to say that knowing that they are conscripts, there is a part of me that kind of feels, you know, a little bit of remorse just for the family, since they didn't necessarily have a choice in this. But then again, it is war, so this is sadly a side effect of it.
Yeah, it's war, and you know, really, I feel mixed on it. I feel sorry for him a little bit, but not that sorry, considering that many of these Russians are probably said the same spiel before they went to battle that we've seen many Russian units say. Something along the lines of, we are not objecting to fighting Ukraine at all. In fact, we want to fight them. It's just that we don't want our commanders throwing us into a meat grinder, and then they got thrown into a meat grinder and slaughtered. So that kind of plays a little bit in my mind, because we don't really see a lot of Russian soldiers saying that they just outright refuse to fight the Ukrainians. They're always refusing because they think their commanders are incompetent, but they're more than willing to fight the Ukrainians. So that also is in play a little bit. I don't know. That might make a fairly good poll, although Matthew's trying out a new poll formula tonight, so I don't want to throw in any extra ones, but still.
Сейчас хожу, еще привезли.
Dang, thank you so much, Dickie D.
Наши мальчишки.
But I'm going to cut the video right here because, of course, we have to move on to the Western world and move on into the news there. But you can see that the 155th Brigade certainly took some incredibly high casualties, and a lot of these guys did end up, oddly enough, coming home, but they're not coming home alive, and this is certainly not the homecoming that a lot of these Russians living in Vladivostok expected of these soldiers. A lot of them expected, like the Russian propaganda would make them believe, that these guys would come home as glorious victors, perfectly unscathed, in a war where they slaughtered Ukrainians left and right, whether they be citizens of Ukraine or soldiers of Ukraine. And instead, they got to see this as their homecoming. The 155th Naval Infantry Brigade practically no longer exists. There's a very small part of it that is still functioning and alive, and really shows how badly even Russia's quote-unquote elite units are getting grinded up in the war. And, of course, being replaced by the conscripts from the partial mobilization, like the 72nd Brigade, which has now taken their place. We're now going to be moving on from Vladivostok and the 155th's homecoming, and we're now going to be moving on into the Western world before we even get into Ukraine, because, once again, there's some fairly interesting news over here. And on our way back over, I have to show y'all the damage that has been caused in Voronezh to a Wagner unit Su-24 that was hit by a manpad during its mission. It was damaged and able to make it back to its base fine, but you can see that the damage to the rear engine, rear left side engine, and also elevator were quite extensive. We can see them looking around and observing the shrapnel damage. And funnily enough, according to the caption on this video, this was also the Su-24 that Prighozin sat in some kind of a propaganda video where he proposed that Zelensky and him have a one-on-one duel in aircraft, which sounds asinine. I never saw the clip, but this is supposedly the exact same aircraft.
For the record, Zelensky would win that, but
Zelensky would stomp Prighozin. But I don't know. I mean, like, Prighozin would have an advantage because his perfectly bald head would probably have an aviation helmet fit onto it a lot better and a lot more firmly. But I don't know. See them looking into the engine. We can't see any visible damage inside the engine. The left one, at least. And the right one also looks the same. And we can see that some panels had been blown out below the engine, most likely service panels. Correct me if I'm wrong. Man, that manpad tore up that the left elevator. When you see him pointing out some damage on the engine itself, and you can actually see some of the plumbing that helps that engine to operate. Most likely plumbing for the afterburner, considering how far back it is on the engine.
Dang.
Holy moly.
Thank you, Dickie D.
Oh, man. Thank you so much.
That's an interesting name, too.
That certainly is, I gotta say. But we're going to cut this video right here because the last 10 seconds once again show the exact same damage, but once again, the Ukrainians were able to largely take the Su-24 out of action for a good while. This one will most likely be flying again because this is by no means critical airframe damage. It appears that an engine was damaged, and if the Russians are able to source a operational Su-24 engine of the variant that's used in this aircraft, they'll most likely just pull this engine out, replace it, and then patch over the damage to the exterior of the aircraft and also repair the elevator as well. But once again, it looks like they're getting chewed up whenever they fly their aircraft over Ukraine. Now it's time for us to finally move into the Western world, and we're going to be crossing the seas entirely and moving on into the United States because I saw a comment from someone today in the U.S. military that I had to mention because I have to tear them a new one. Now, I know that we usually try and keep things fairly civil, but this is just getting aggravating to me at this point, and I feel like this guy ought to just stop mentioning things or bringing up things about Ukraine, because he almost seems like a fair weather a commenter, because he just says whatever he thinks is going in vogue at the time. So moving on into Washington, D.C., of course, Milley now says that the Russians have lost in every degree, strategically, tactically, and also operationally. And this comes just about a couple of weeks after he said something like, the Ukrainians and the Russians have both taken over 100,000 casualties, and the Ukrainians are getting eaten up. And now he's saying that the Russians have lost the war. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the guy from any other perspective. I'm talking about the guy from the perspective of all the comments he's made on Ukraine. This guy needs to stop making comments, because it's just infuriating to listen to him flip-flop from one direction of the Ukrainians are getting slaughtered to the next time the Russians won, or the Ukrainians won. He just flips from whatever the hell he wants. It's like he doesn't even have any information to back up these statements. Like, it's annoying as hell. That's all I gotta say. This pisses me off. I don't care what this guy says, even if it backs up my idea that the Russians lost as soon as the fourth day of the war came around. This guy is going to flip this statement around. Watch, I bet you money, at least within a month, and he'll be sitting there talking about the Russians are probably about to curb stomp the Ukrainians, and right now they're, putting their boot on the back of Ukraine's head. Though he'll probably be saying something like that in a month's time, because he's flip-flopped like this over 12 months. And what really brought me to bring this up today is that, of course, the mainstream news, both Fox, CNN, whether it be one leaning direction or the other, they're all bringing this guy up, and they're talking about how he's sitting here and saying, oh, the Russians have now lost. It's like, but last 3 weeks ago, you were talking about how he was saying the Russians were going to curb stomp him. This is just annoying as hell. And this is why I find this to be really annoying. You got to pick one direction or the other. Either the Ukrainians are winning and they're having difficult moments here and there, but they're still managing to stay on top, or the Russians are winning. You're in one camp or the other. You can't flip around depending on what you think public opinion is. That is just lame, and that's trying to... I don't even know what it is, what the actual wordage for it is, but it's annoying to me. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the United States, and of course that news, and moving back into Europe and into France, where we heard an interesting piece of equipment would be delivered to the Ukrainians in the near future. France will be sending SAMP-Ts. These are a surface-to-air missile defense system I have never really heard much about, but I had to say when I saw the picture, it was fairly interesting. It appears to be similar to an Iris-T, at least in the size of the missile, and so we can assume that the range may also be similar to an Iris-T. But let's pull up some additional information about the SAMP and find out what this thing is able to do. So, the Aster appears to be the missile system, and that is it. We can see it is a SAMP-T Aster missile, so let's see what kind of range this thing has. Flight altitude is around 13 kilometers. The Aster 15 has an operational range of above 30 kilometers, so very similar to the Iris-T as an Aster 15. The Aster 30 is a massive improvement in range over the former Aster 15, being able to reach out above 120 kilometers in range. The Aster 30 Block 1 NT is also able to reach even further than that. So this thing appears to be quite a far-hitting and heavy-hitting missile, at least the more modern variants like the Aster 30 and the Aster 30 Block N1. And so this thing appears to kind of be the equivalent of the French Patriot, but at the same time, it also appears to have come out later in history. The Patriot was introduced into service before the Gulf War. This was introduced just in time for the invasion of Iraq, although the French didn't really participate in that heavily. So I would say this is a very big help to Ukraine, especially in terms of their air defense, and it also appears that it is being used on Type 45 destroyers by the British Navy, or the Royal Navy. So that is a very interesting note to bring up, and also the Horizon-class frigates of the French and Italian navies. So a fairly competent system, because naval ships usually use some of the most advanced, I guess you could say, ordnance interdiction systems there are, and that's a very over-technical term for what is really just shooting down incoming missiles or rockets. But they usually have the most advanced because modern ships are designed to not take hits. They're designed to shoot them down before they even get close. So we can assume that this thing is incredibly competent and probably operates fairly well. And so the French say that they're going to be sending some of these. We don't get an exact number, but some of them to Ukraine, and hopefully they'll be able to bolster Ukraine's defenses a little bit further and help to shoot down any missiles that are entering their country. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on to Google Maps, where we're still in the middle of Vladivostok. I'll move that back over to Ukraine. And we're now going to be moving on into Germany, because in Germany, and if y'all are wondering why I say Germany, that's actually the Russian way to pronounce it, and if you ever listen to their stupid TV and their propaganda networks, you'll always hear them say Germansky or Germany. But anyways, moving on from that, into the town of Bremerhaven, we got to see the first pictures of all of the Bradleys and the Strikers being unloaded at Bremerhaven. For some reason, this has hit me like a truck, because I either forgot that we were sending Strikers, or I didn't know we were sending this number, but we have sent a massive number of Strikers to Germany, and these will be making their way to Ukraine. We can see the picture right here. We can also see full-fledged MRAPs. These are not the Max Pros. These are the legitimate MRAPs that many people have come to know, and they're also in this allotment of vehicles in Bremerhaven as well, along with a lot of support vehicles that you can see at the bottom of the screen. On the next picture, we can once again see a decent amount of MRAPs, a lot of them in the NATO tricolor SARC with a, I guess you could say, like a desert tan covering for the turret. And then in the next picture, we can also see a whole bunch of Bradleys. We can also see Humvee Avengers, Avenger AA systems right here. And then in the last picture, we can see more Bradleys, some HEMTTs, and over on the other side of the street, some more HEMTTs or HEMTs, some more Humvees, and more additional vehicles. These things are incredibly neat. And of course, the Bradleys are quite a heavy-hitting armored personnel carrier, one of the best in the world from what we're able to know. And hopefully, these things will make their way into Ukraine eventually. Of course, the crews have to be trained on them beforehand, but we do know that training is already underway, and we'll see these things in use alongside other vehicles in Ukraine in the very near future, and hopefully helping the Ukrainians to continue to hold the initiative and push the Russians back inch by inch, yard by yard, mile by mile. And so with that, we're now moving on from Bremerhaven, and of course, if we have any viewers in the Lee Spring Army from Bremerhaven, because I know that we have some literally right next door in Wilhelmshaven, just across pretty much this large bay right here, let us know, because I would love to know how many German viewers are here and how many German viewers are near this historic port where history is being made in terms of the support we're sending to Ukraine. We have not seen the Abrams delivered to Ukraine yet. They may already be in Poland, and we may be sending Polish Abrams into Ukraine and then resupplying the Poles, although we know that apparently they're M1A2s that we're sending without the depleted uranium armor, but nonetheless, incredibly neat. It also looks like we were correct in saying that the vehicle loading area would be over here, because if we look at these lots, like this one, it's already got U.S. military vehicles in it, so it appears that they were unloaded at the, I guess you could say, vehicle carrying ship unloading bay that we thought they would be unloaded at earlier. So now
it looks like maybe we're sending more equipment that's not necessarily like dumping like old equipment on Ukraine. This is more newer equipment, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's fairly new. Like especially the Bradleys that we're sending, they appear to be the M3 A3 variant or the M2 A3 variant that has a lot of the modern upgrades to it, like the advanced IR systems, the I believe additional armor plating that we put on some parts of it. Although if you want to call that armor in the modern world, it's a little bit of a stretch. Still, it's impressive. It's really modern tech, and especially things like HEMTTs. While we use those a lot in the U.S. military, in terms of a supply vehicle, they carry a lot of supplies on a single vehicle, and they're also a decent amount more expensive than other supply vehicles you would be seeing in other countries right now. So this is getting on up there towards some of the more advanced equipment, and also the fact that we're sending Avenger surface-to-air missile systems, you know, on the Humvees, is also very interesting as well. So let me pull up the Avenger SAM right here. These things are neat. Like, for some reason, I have an interesting fascination with these, although it's just a turreted Stinger launcher. These things are really interesting from top to bottom with the idea and the philosophy behind them, and this is about as good as American surface-to-air missile defense systems get. U.S. doctrine never really revolved around getting incredibly advanced in terms of air defense. The Patriot is something of a surface-to-air missile system. It's more of a missile interception system than anything else. It can be used to shoot down aircraft, though. But in terms of actual frontline air defenses, this is about the best that America ever evolved itself into. The Russians went heavily into air defense, like the Tors, the Tunguskas. A lot of other countries would also get involved in that as well, like the Gepards from Germany. We never did, because the United States' doctrine relied heavily on air support by the U.S. Air Force instead of ground surface-to-air missile defense systems, and that's also why, due to that doctrine of pretty much overwhelming air superiority, you would see countries like the Soviet Union develop all of these different kinds of frontline surface-to-air missile systems and just anti-air systems in general, because they were trying to counter overwhelming air superiority that the United States would have going into a war. So that's a fairly interesting bit of history, and also, I don't know. Only 1,100 of these things were made. I was about to say I don't know how many of them have been made. Only 1,100 of them, which is not a high number. That's actually quite small, especially when you consider that a lot of these are used by foreign countries like the Japanese, who also had some of these for a short while. But still, incredibly neat to see. Great to know that we're sending them, and that Ukraine will be getting even more frontline anti-air support in the form of these Avengers. We're now moving on from Germany, though, and we're moving to where the action is really happening, which is in Poland. And we've been getting some interesting videos showing that accelerated training program being conducted by the Polish is coming along quite well, and we even got to see an interview with a Ukrainian Leopard 2 tanker. So starting off with our first clip, here's a little bit of information adding on to the training with the Leopard 2s. We can actually see that the training has been taken over by the Canadian Army, and they are inside of Poland and helping these tankers to learn how to operate these Leopard 2A4s. And moving on into the next picture, we can see that right here as well, where they're in a Leopard 2 simulator, showing the crews how to operate it. Very cool. It's very neat. And it's great to know that this is an international effort. The Polish are not the only ones training these Ukrainian tankers. They're also being trained by militaries that are quite competent as well, like the Canadian military. So we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into yesterday's clip, where we actually got to see an interview with the Ukrainian tanker that will be taking the Leopard 2 back into Ukraine and using it there. So with that, here's the interview, and of course, as normal, I will lower the audio and read off the subtitles. So, here we go. The name of the tanker is also Vadim. As of today, I can say that the vehicle is of high quality. Very good. And what I like is that our soldiers like it very much. I think that the time period given up to us will be enough to learn the vehicles. All my soldiers, including myself personally, came from the Eastern Front, Donetsk, Luhansk, battle-hardened units, directly from the combat zone. So we didn't have much time. We received the command, and literally in 2 to 3 days we were already in Poland. Currently, we significantly lack armored vehicles, and I hope that when we arrive with vehicles to the front line, it will save the lives of many of our soldiers and bring us closer to victory. I'm 57-year-old, and I'm a pensioner for a very long time. But on the first day of the war, I came to the war as a volunteer. And that's the end of the clip. That's the end of the little interview we got to see right now. And also, it appears that they're helping to train, and, you know, of course, this is a very far-reaching observation, so take it with a grain of salt, but we see a little M577 over there in the corner, which is the command variant of the M113. So it appears that they're not only training these crews on how to operate the Leopard 2A4, but they may also be training the tank unit's commander in the M5777 how to command them on the field from inside of the command vehicle. So that is a very interesting thing to see over there in the corner, and it may be showing us how extensive and how well trained these Ukrainian units may be on this accelerated training program before they get sent back to Ukraine. Also, it's very interesting to hear this guy say this because, you know, of course, for Russian bots, this proves and shows that the Ukrainians are not lying when a lot of these people stepped up as volunteers. This guy at this age of 57 years old and being a pensioner, coming from the Russians, would most likely have been forcefully conscripted into their military, and we would find that out if he was captured by the Ukrainian government or the Ukrainian military and then questioned later on, like we see in some videos. This guy admitted outside of Ukraine, where he could probably be given amnesty if he sat there and said something bad about the Ukrainian government, that he stepped up to defend his country as a volunteer at 57 years old because he felt the need to defend his own lands. And I think that's a very important point to make. This guy's under no pressure of being inside of Ukraine and being scared of any political or diplomatic reprisals from the Ukrainian government on him for saying anything negative about them. And he has nothing but good things to say about Ukraine, the soldiers fighting on the front lines, and his want and willingness to defend his own nation. And I think that's a very important point to make, considering we've never gotten an interview with a Ukrainian soldier outside of the borders of Ukraine. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip, and once again, huge shout out to Vadim and his unit that's currently training on those beautiful looking Leopard 2A4s in the background with that NATO tricolor. And we're now going to be moving on out of Poland and finally on into our news in Ukraine. And there's been quite a large amount of it. Before we get to the location unknowns, I will show you all this little clip of the Ukrainians blowing up a abandoned bridge on the Belarusian border, perhaps trying to ensure that in the near future, if anything was to happen, the Russians will not have this one crossing to account for. And we can see that they put quite a charge on that thing. It appears that the concrete vaporized in the center, and the spans of the bridge collapsed into the middle of that small creek. It also appears that it may have been in the exclusion zone due to the neglect that it has suffered for such a while. With that, that's the end of the clip. But once again, really nice to see that the Ukrainians are thinking ahead and making sure to take care of anything that may be used against them in the future if anything goes from bad to worse. We're now moving on into our location unknowns, and we have some fairly interesting ones tonight, and of course the casualty report to go over, and it's not getting any better for the Russians. The casualties are continuing to stay incredibly high, although comparatively over the past week they are somewhat low. But before we get on into these location unknown news bits, and the only one that we got from day 356, Matthew has been throwing up some of the most interesting polls I've seen in a while. Matthew has done something new, just for those of y'all to know. He's actually pre-prepared these polls before the stream. They're not being made at the moment, and he has been looking into some of the bigger bits of news that's come out today and making polls related to that. So they are incredibly interesting, a mark above the rest. And let's make sure to get into them and hear what everyone's been thinking about these polls.
All right. So for our first question segment, we do have 3 polls to address. And these are pre-prepared, but they aren't stale yet. They're still hot off the oven. So the very first one is, NATO's Stoltenberg believes Russia's new big offensive has already begun. And what are your thoughts? 50% said that it might explain the high losses. 27% said it has started 100%. 14% said unsure. And 8% said no, Stoltenberg is mistaken. And on this one, I've got to go with the most popular option, which is that might explain the high losses. The Russians are losing men at a rate that hasn't been seen since the beginning of the war, when they were throwing literally everything they had at the Ukrainians. And I think that it would explain it. And also, I'm sure Stoltenberg is probably privy to information that we don't have. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe the offensive has not necessarily begun, because once again, the offensive is stated to have around 500,000 soldiers in it, and considering the insanely high number there, we would have to assume that the intensity of action anywhere on the front line would be increasing, and from what we know, those would be increasing in the area of Zaporizhia or Donetsk, and we're not really seeing that. We're seeing that the battle in Bakhmut is still going on, the Battle of Volodar is still continuing, but no additional actions have occurred in the Zaporizhia area today, no frontline changes we could observe as well anywhere else, either in Donetsk or in the Zaporizhia front. So for that reason, and just due to the utter size of this supposed offensive coming up, I would have to say I still don't believe it's really happening, and I think the massive casualties are occurring because poorly experienced units are being pushed into the lines completely unprepared, not trained at all for political purposes, because the Russian command does not care how many soldiers get killed in a single assault. They only care about the results that come from those assaults. So with that, I hope that does address the poll, in my opinion, fairly well. That was actually a really good one, Matthew, and let's hear the next one, because I'm sure it's even better.
All right. And the next one says yesterday, the U.S. State Department told U.S. citizens to leave Russia immediately. And what are your thoughts? And before I go over the responses, I'm kind of shocked that Americans are still even in Russia, but apparently there are some still there. It looks like 40% said something big is going to happen. 31% said Russia will conscript these civilians. 21% said Russia is going to harass them. And 8% said unsure. And I think what it really is, because I read another article that kind of confirmed this, Russia is planning on conscripting migrants and also visitors in their country to go fight on the front lines in the Ukraine war. I haven't been able to confirm that 100%, but I did see that in one of the headlines. So that is a possibility. So that's the option I'm going with. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe the most likely reason for that is that exact reason, because usually the United States is pretty lax on telling people to get out of the country whenever things are going south. I mean, like, hell, even with things going on in Haiti, like, you know, the nation of Haiti could literally explode overnight, and in maybe 3 days we'll tell people, hey, maybe not go there. So the idea of them telling American citizens to leave Russia right now, which is kind of weird, because I also thought we did that at the beginning of the war. You know, about 3 weeks in, we told everyone to leave, and then apparently some people are still dumb enough, like Patrick Lancaster, to stay, and we're telling them to leave again. Although I think it'd be okay. I think the Russians can keep Patrick Lancaster. We're not really missing anything if he stays there. It does show that apparently that is a serious concern, and we're actually trying to stop Americans from being forced to fight in an army or for a country that isn't even theirs and they didn't even voluntarily fight for. So hopefully they do leave. Honestly, I feel like if you're in Russia at this point, 12 months in, you've got to be a shill or something. So, you know, keep that in mind, especially Patrick Lancaster. That's one guy I hope does not come home. I hope he does end up getting conscripted by the Russian military, end up sitting there and flinching on the front lines every time a round goes off. We're in the front lines. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And the third and final one of the first question segment is kind of a disturbing poll, I have to admit. It says Russia is allegedly relocating over 6,000 Ukrainian children into quote unquote re-education camps. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 50% said that's a war crime and NATO should step in and intervene. 40% said that's worse than expected. 6% said unsure, and 4% said not as bad as expected. And I have to admit that there's a lot of things that are acceptable in war. War is not pretty. It's always nasty. But when you start messing with children, that is a new level of depravity in my mind, and that really rubs me really badly just thinking about that. But I'm going to have to say, I'm going to go with the 50% that says it's a war crime and NATO should do something about it. I don't think we can ignore the fact that children are being taken out of Ukraine that are as young as 6 months old and being put into re-education camps to be taught how to fight and to basically remove their culture from their memories, basically. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to say it's a sickening idea to think that you would forcibly remove children from where they live, take them into a foreign country without their parents, and then start trying to teach them about your culture, erase the one they came from, and then also indoctrinate them into your cult to try and make them fight for you. And that's about one of the worst crimes I can ever imagine. It honestly seems worse than putting people in concentration camps, because you're going to take these people, these kids of these people that you're still committing atrocities against, and raise them to kill their own people. And that seems like a new level of depravity and evil that I've never even think the world has touched on yet. I've never even heard of anyone really doing that, of raising kids to try and train them to join their own military, the Russian military, and go back to their own country and end up slaughtering their own people. That is a new level of sickness, and I think that ought to be taken into account if the Russians ever do get decisively defeated in the future when we're bringing them up again, for crimes against humanity, because I consider doing acts against children of any kind, whether it be, you know, I'm not even going to go over the list, y'all get the picture, any kind of act against children, to be the worst kind of crime imaginable, because you're taking an innocent child, doesn't know anything about the world, and you're going to sit there and commit heinous atrocities against them. Innocent children. And that has got to be the sickest thing I can imagine anywhere in the world. And I hope that the Russians that are involved in this, whether they're soldiers, whether they're government officials, I hope that they find their day coming around really soon. And I hope there are numbers on it, because that is a sickening and deplorable thing that they're doing to these kids. And hopefully it doesn't happen to any more kids, and this war can round out soon enough that we ensure that those 6,000 can hopefully be returned, or those are the only 6,000 that sadly happens to. So with that, I hope that does address.
You know, I wonder if during the times of the Nazis, what was the first like public indication that we had that something horrific was happening in these camps that the Nazis had? What was the first sign of it?
The first sign of anything horrific happening began as soon as they opened up the camps. Now, we didn't really know a lot about what was happening in them specifically, but we did know that the conditions were incredibly harsh, very, very harsh. And we also knew about the Soviet gulags as well. So, you know, we knew about it all over here in the United States. And once again, to draw on my best historical example that we knew about this at least in 1941 is if you take a look at the movie Casablanca, there is a reference made in that movie by Peter Lorre, the character that Peter Lorre plays, I believe, where he talks about in concentration camps, one can get fairly hungry. And of course, that's a sarcastic jab at people starving to death inside of concentration camps. So at least during the time of filming in late 1941, it was already known fairly well in the public here in the United States what was happening in concentration camps and what they were doing to anyone who found themselves inside the compound or the confines of one of the concentration camps anywhere in, Germany or Eastern Europe.
It seems like we're kind of getting like the first indications that something similar might be about to happen in Russia, and it'll be interesting to see how NATO reacts to it. Are we going to step in and do something about it, or are we going to let the same thing basically repeat itself again?
I wonder. I believe that we're probably going to let the same thing happen, because if we've seen anything, it's that these kinds of atrocities, no one really ever steps up and stops them. Everyone always just mourns that they've happened, but no one really stops them. Also, thank you, John Underwood. It's Peter Lorre, or Lorre, apparently. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I don't really know how to pronounce that name all too well, but like, for example, with anything that happened in the Balkans during the breakup of Yugoslavia, when Serbs were committing atrocities against people from Kosovo, and everyone was practically committing atrocities against any other ethnic group from any other part of the former Yugoslavian nation, we stepped in and tried to do something about that a little bit, but by and large, those atrocities just continued for years. And the damages of what happened down there could still be seen and felt to this day. Kind of like how in Russia, you can still see the damages that were caused by the Russians persecuting anyone that fell out of their ethnic norms. Or, for example, the Germans. I mean, there's no Jews that live in Germany anymore. They make up something like 0.7% of their population, and that's because pretty much their entire population was wiped out completely during the Holocaust and the Second World War. And of course, I would love to go into what's going on in a certain country in East Asia right now, but YouTube doesn't really like us going over that. So we have to take that one and take it in stride. And that's another good point to bring up, because while we can't talk about what's going on in this part of China directly, we can talk about why nothing will ever change. You notice how we can't talk about something like that? At least here, it's because sometimes people have an economic interest, and people who are being persecuted for one reason or another, sometimes they could impede getting in the way of their economic interests if they were, as a company, to speak up about something. So then they force that onto others that, you know, they have a little bit of control over. So then we end up not even being able to really address that. Everyone just kind of pushes that under the rug, and the atrocities continue. So with that, you know, that's really honestly how it'll go. These kinds of atrocities will never end. As long as people are alive, and as long as there is any kind of difference from one person to another, they will be persecuted. And that's just how it is. So with that, also, yes, Barrett, we cannot talk about them on YouTube. They don't like that. And so with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so changing gears a little bit, moving on to our Super Chat questions. Up first, we have a $150 donation from the Dickie D, who says, Enforcer Matt, I've been following, but not normally live. So love you guys and love your impressions and the...
And thank you so much for the support, Dickie D. Matthew, once again, that yeehaw went out. Like, I don't know what it is because Matthew and me actually looked over Sunday night stream and actually saw that there was a reverb because we played it over again and you can hear it. So we've tried to fix that. So I can't hear him breathing. And also to explain why I hear things y'all can't hear, I'll show y'all this real quick. Matthew's audio has been reduced by nearly 30%, and all of the desktop audio has been reduced by 30%. So while I can hear something fine on stream, y'all are hearing a 30% noise reduction version of what I'm hearing. So that's why y'all couldn't hear it that well. You could still hear it a little bit, and we tried to fix that. I don't know what Matthew's done to his settings, but now it's not picking up his yee-haws too well.
Let me hit it again. Let me hit it again.
Yeah, hit it again. Wait, it's still not picking up. It's not picking up like
What?
the e-haw like part of it. It's picking up the ye and the aw at the end of it in the beginning. But
Let's try one more thing.
yeah, it didn't even pick it up at all that time. All we hear is and then it just went out.
Oh, that's messed up. I got to fix that because the yeehaw is like a trademark. We got to have that.
Yeah, we gotta. Now I'll be hearing Matthew smacking in the background every once in a while. Y'all won't hear it, but I will. Anyways, moving on from that. I got to thank you so much once again for the support, Dickie D. A funny name, by the way. I don't know if that's like your real name, but I think that's a great name. But moving on from that, I thank you so much for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because without viewers like y'all, it wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to go to college. And we wouldn't be able to keep the lights on, although it's more so for rent. But I still thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. Because without you, it wouldn't be possible. And thank you so much for enjoying this stream, even when you're not live, and helping us to support it live so that way we can keep this thing rolling. And so I hope we address that fairly well once again. And thank you so much for all the support you've sent in. You've sent in loads of support tonight. I believe like 4 separate super chats, if I'm correct, Matthew.
Yes, and I combined it all into one.
And so thank you so much once again. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and also yeehaw, since that one won't go through. Up next, we have a glitch in the spreadsheet. Hold on just a second. All right, there we go. So up next, we have a $130 donation from Mark Slav Ukraine, who says a request, Andrew to do the yeehaw and Matt to do the without your support. And with that, I hope I've addressed the question.
Oh, well,
so take it away.
I thank you so much for the support, Mark, and
All right, and without your support, Mark, we couldn't keep the lights on and run the channel. And with that, I hope I've addressed the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
and of course, thank you so much.
Is that bad that I have that like memorized?
Well,
said so much.
I don't know. I hate it, Mark, because it's become like a repeatable line, and I don't really know what else. I don't really know new ways to say it because I've tried to come up with new ways, but I don't really know how to put it into words, but I do always want y'all to understand we appreciate y'all's support and help us to keep this thing running. And so I just did the spiel right there anyways, but still, thank you once again, Mark. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And of course, from what we know, Trester, Mark, and Spencer were all on the last Sunday fundraiser and were really helping it reach new heights. And so I got to thank you, Mark, for the support of that fundraiser and helping it to get to where it was. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and hopefully we answered that question fairly well. And the next one goes to Gordon B., who puts in a $100 donation and says, keep up the great work, and thanks for all of your hard work and LSA rules.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Gordon B., and I thank you for saying the LSA rules. The LSA is the best thing on Earth, the coolest thing on Earth. Like, who in the world could say that a community around a channel like ours was able to fundraise $13,400 in 2.5 hours? Not many people around YouTube can say that. No one really is able to fundraise to those heights. But somehow, well, Lee Spring Army is full of such incredible and such kind and generous people that fundraisers like that are largely normal for this channel, and it's unbelievable to think, and it's crazy to know that folks like you are helping this channel to keep running, helping us to continue our help to Ukraine, and also covering this news. And I've also got to thank you for allowing me to do something that I had wanted to do for a long time. This is something that I truly enjoy doing. I love covering modern news, covering things dealing with history a little bit, or at least drawing on history, and doing things like helping people out. I think it's great. And I got to thank you so much once again for support, Gordon B, and helping us to keep this thing running and also enjoying this channel that much. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And well, actually, that was the last one.
That was actually, yeah, that was the last one.
So we're now going to be moving on from this segment, but I thank you so much once again for the support, Gordon, and helping us to keep this thing rolling. With that, it's now time for us to move into our location unknown, starting off with day 356, and then moving into day 357. So starting off here, we saw a Ukrainian soldier made a friend, and y'all not going to believe who it is. Ratatouille! Ratatouille! And so here's the clip. Ratatouille! Ratatouille!
Шамиль. А ну розвернись, покрутись. Другого боку. Знаєш, у настоящих піратів на плечі попугає у тебе миша.
It's all fun and games until that thing bites him and he gets rabies, but still, it's a cool little video, and it's neat to know that he made a friend with Ratatouille, Ratatouille.
I would like to borrow that suppressor he's got in his front pocket right there.
Yeah. You know, it's great. I guess he just puts that out there like a tool, like it's on a toolkit, like, oh, we're in a firefight. And then he just puts the suppressor and starts screwing it onto the thread on the front of the gun. Oh, it's time to get
it's
to
so
work.
cool looking.
Yeah.
Nice tan color.
Yeah, I like it. Also, this guy's kit is fairly nice. And also, notice Katarov LARPers, this guy actually uses the paratrooper helmet with a headset. It actually has a purpose here, unlike the posers that don't wear headsets with these goofy looking helmets. Without a headset, that's practically stupid. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that location unknown news clip and on into our present day 357 news, starting off with our first bit where we saw that the Russians put out a telegram post saying that one of their guys was blown up. And let's read how. Attention! And this is, of course, from a Russian perspective, so keep this in mind. Attention! The enemy deliberately abandons unusable ammunition. Frontline soldiers report that one of our servicemen loaded a trophy caliber 545 into a gun. As a result, the gun partially tore apart from the explosion and our fighter died. According to the colleagues of the deceased, the enemy deliberately manufactures unusable ammunition so that it gets to our servicemen. Previously, there have been 3 reports that the enemy is mining the places where weapons and ammunition are stored in strong points. Some idiot picked up a gun from wherever it was from a Ukrainian soldier and tried to shoot it. And it had hot ammo in it. It had Bubba's hot load in it. And it blew up in his face and he died. Also, I know what I said there, Matthew. I know what I said. Don't be quiet. Don't be quiet. You made that awkward. We're just going to pass over that. But still, it's nice to know that they were able to get this guy in one form or another. Only you can prevent yourself from dying from hot loads. You know, if anyone knows about hot loads, it's Kentucky Ballistics, who actually ran into a really unfortunate run-in with one where a 50 cal exploded in his face. But anyways, giggity. I saw that in the last channel, so I had to do it. But still, great to know that the Ukrainians are coming up with ingenious ways to get the Russians, even after they pick up their guns. We're now going to be moving on into the next bit of location unknown news, where we saw a burning vehicle near a Ukrainian soldier's position, and it was quite nice to see. Here's your clip.
Це красавчики дали, блядь.
We see it roasting out there in the field.
Смачного, блядь, смідарам, блядь. А? Горить, палає техніка ворожа. Славна Україна переможе.
This guy is singing one
Welcome
of the
to
new
Ukraine,
beats.
сука. Бека хуяри.
Leon's Pierre said, why you gotta make it weird, man?
За русским воєнним кораблем, нахуй.
God.
Ну, якщо вони там вже були, вже їх там точно.
Там вже все, блядь, там вже їм. Вічний вогонь, нахуй. Не вічний, сука, до ранку догорить.
Ooh. Oh, looks like someone just turned on the stove, Matthew, from simmer to high.
Не вічний, сука, до ранку догорить. О, ти,
Or they're getting cooked.
А, отлично. А ну.
Ooh.
Ага.
Ого. Бля, воно ще нахуй може десь сюди нахуй уїбати. Йобана в рот.
This guy's been on the battlefield too long. He's just like evilly laughing at this whole thing.
Yeah, this seems like smoking like a pressure cooker out there. He's just laughing
Так
at it.
підараси буде з кожним, нахуй. Хто на нашу землю прийде, блядь. там пукаєш,
Oh
блядь.
man, and the Indian windows are coming in after that one
Не
talk
віти,
about
бля,
the
як
hot
шулін
loads.
нахуй тікали. Ми з Макаром, блядь, то РПК, блядь, я свого нахуй. Джаги, блядь.
Did he just say jugga jugga?
Yeah, he said it real calmly.
Yeah, he said juggy juggy. Oh man, it sounds like popcorn in a microwave out there. Ooh.
Oh,
Куда грязочку. Як земля красиво, а?
А,
Йобана в рот.
that sounded like a bullet that went past his head.
What the hell is this? Michael Bay's tank? Look at this. What was this?
Йобана в рот.
на,
Dude, fire coming out in the rear end, if you know what I mean. Like, these guys got gonorrhea.
Це фаєр-шоу.
Це, звісно, хорошо, блядь, але поле в диму. Це хуйово.
That really does sound like popcorn, though, doesn't
Далеко
it?
все одно вони не залізуть.
Yeah, is that just ammunition blowing up?
Yeah, that's like machine gun ammo blowing up in the tank. Look at this. What is this? What kind of
Did
ammo?
one just whiz over his head a second ago?
Русський
I
мір
think it did. That's why they got
зустріли,
down.
How can it do that if it's not like in a gun? Like, how's it go in a direction like that?
It's probably really low velocity, so it's probably only going like 100 miles an hour, and it just kind of like casually like whizzes over his head. It would be the best way I could explain it. You know, of course, we don't want to go too far, Matthew, or otherwise, you know, someone may come in and tell me that it's not whizzing over their head, it's floating over their head. But anyways, that's the end of that little clip right there. And it's nice to know that they were just watching this thing cook off, and it sounds like the popcorn is almost ready. Of course, wait until it stops popping and then go out there and get the popcorn. We're now going to be moving on from that location unknown news bit and on into our casualty report because the losses have been quite high. Man, 740 Russian troops killed, and this is, funnily enough, considered one of the lowest lost days for the Russian armed forces over about the past 10 days. And that is what would be, several months ago, one of the highest lost days for the Russian army over a single month. So that gives you an idea of how badly it's going for them, is that this is now considered a low loss day, although relatively this is incredibly high losses. We also saw that they lost 8 armored personnel carriers today, 5 supply trucks, 3 tanks, 9 artillery pieces, 4 drones, an MLRS, 2 aircraft. We don't know what 2 aircraft they were, so unfortunately we can't really talk about those, and a Bobcat skid steer.
Oh, just one.
Just the one. And I gotta tell you, Matthew, it's actually not that bad of a day here in the loss figures. I mean, like, the casualties for the infantry aren't that high, but the losses for everything else is actually fairly average. So
No, I think we just gotten used to it. 740 is still very high. It's just not as high as it has been, but
Yeah,
it's been record numbers.
yeah, that's true. I mean, like, that is an entire battalion tactical group worth of soldiers that's been killed. We've gotten, I guess you could say over here in the West, watching this war, we've gotten so used to the casualty figures being that high for about 10 days that an entire BTG dead in 24 hours seems to be low, but that's actually still incredibly high. But very nice to see. Hopefully we see these numbers continue to climb and the averages continue to skyrocket, because that means that the end of the war will be coming around sometime soon. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from the loss report and on to our last bit of location unknown news, where we saw something crazy. Y'all are going to have to watch this one just up close. I'm not going to comment on it. We'll replay it after it plays. This is insane. So here's the clip.
Короче, только что бегал, блядь, хотел батарею отнести, по мне работал пидор. Вот, сука, пидорас, нахуй. Вот
What
так
the
вот
hell?
прилетело, блядь. Ебать его в рот. Охуеть. Все было нормально, слава Украине.
Did you see that? Look at this. He's got a hole, like a bullet hole in his tunic right there. You see it?
Oh yeah, kind of.
He reaches in there
Пидорас, нахуй.
and he pulls out the bullets.
Такая
Huh.
хуйня.
How did it not go through his arm?
Is he like wearing some kind of like flexible body armor under his sleeve?
No, because this thing would have flattened out on it. It's like if I had to take a guess at how that happened, it was at such a far range, probably pretty much a bullet. I don't know how to explain it. I had the word in my mind for a second, but then it slipped me. A bullet that had overshot way over where it was supposed to go and went flying well into a rear line position where this guy was at, and by the time it got to him, it had traveled so far that its velocity was so low that it got stuck in the padding of his clothing. Maybe. Or maybe in a ricochet.
That's insane.
Yeah, it may have been something like that, but fairly wild. Also, Enoch said, that's fake AF. I'll have you know, mister, that during the Battle of Pearl Harbor, there was a guy, I believe it was a Commodore in Pearl Harbor, that actually got shot by a bullet from a Zero. It went through the window of the room that he was looking at the attack from and hit him dead in the chest, but by the time it traveled as far out to him as he was, it just bounced right off his chest and fell on the floor, and then he picked it up and said, I wish this thing had killed me because of what was happening at that moment. Also, someone said it's a spin round. Well, yes, that is true. That's how they usually fly. You fire them and they fly and then they hit someone. So it looks legit. I mean, like I'm not going to say this is fake. I would say that this is probably what happened. And also, how would he explain the little bullet perforation on his clothes? Either this guy has got the the strongest muscles I've ever seen to be able to just absorb the shot, or it was so low velocity when it finally got to him, it hit his clothes and just stopped inside of his clothes. And this isn't, and also to give you a little bit of personal accounts from my family that shows that this may be real, we actually had a relative, he's passed now several years ago, who served in the Second World War, and he received 2 Purple Hearts for shrapnel injuries. Although the shrapnel never actually injured him, it got stuck in the padding of his clothes, which shows that it can be low enough velocity that it can get in their clothes and stop inside of them. So with that, I see in that clip, fairly wild to see. That actually may be a good poll to run, Matthew. I know you have like your pre-made polls tonight, but was that bullet in his clothes real or not? Because I'm seeing like some people saying, you know, it was in there, it's not in there, it's real, it's fake. So maybe that might be an interesting poll to run. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little clip, and we're going to run a poll over something trivial, Matthew, just trivial. We're now moving on out of the location unknowns and on into the northeastern area, where we've seen a normal amount of activity, but some fairly interesting stuff. So starting off with our northeastern front summary, over the past 24 hours, we have seen some things. Starting off over the past 24 hours, and then the past 48, you see nothing's happened in the northeast, but we have been seeing a little bit of action. For example, in Kuzmivka, we saw the Ukrainians dropping grenades on the Russians, and the Russians getting quite a load from these grenades of shrapnel. And we hear the Lego City music playing. Somebody's flying a drone copter in Lego City. Hey, you can build the bomblet. Drop it on the Russians.
I'm not going to ask how you can imitate that. Like, where'd you recently listen to a Lego video
I don't know,
from?
man. That's been stuck in my head for ever since I first saw a Lego commercial. But we see the bomblet on its way, falling down towards the Russians under that tree. It looks like they're having a romantic moment. It explodes, shrapnel goes flying, and they go rolling. And man, look at that one guy. He's getting on into the crawl. You see the second bomblet right under the camera, but the drone looks like it's flying off. It's just going to leave him with that. We see them walking off. Oh, well, actually one of them's being dragged off. Unfortunate. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, and it's interesting to see the Russians are still getting had up in the area of Kuzmivka. So we're now going to be moving on from Kuzmivka and a little bit more behind the lines in the Svatove area, where we saw a Russian truck driver not save his friend. I thought friends were forever, but apparently not in Russia, comrade. Apparently the comradeship only lasts as long as the comrade is okay, and then it's over. Going to turn that down a little bit. Man, they put a bar over Putin's eyes? Literally,
Can't look into his eyes. It's forbidden.
Yeah, apparently you get your soul to the devil. Oh, sorry, we're getting some smooth jazz. Well, actually some hip jazz, but we see the Russians setting up their artillery pieces here. It's not going to be a fun day. We can see one truck driving off. The second one's driving off, and there's a guy left behind. Unfortunately, like the American public education system where they say no child left behind, it appears that in Russia, Russians can be left behind without really anything happening to them. Oh man, look at that. Unfortunate. We used to see this a lot back in the earlier days of the war, but nowadays this is a little rare. But still hilarious. Also, it looks like they left behind an entire artillery piece. Like, this one's leaving with its artillery piece. This one isn't. I mean, you see artillery still landing on top of him, and this poor guy is still running for the trees, literally. That's the end of the clip, and, oh, buddy, I'm sure he's going to have a lot to tell those guys if he ever gets back to camp. If he gets back to camp, because it's freezing cold out there. I don't know if he'll, make it, but anyways, we're now moving on. That's the Russia's problem. If they wanted to pick him up, they should have picked him up. We're now moving on from the Svatove area and further on down the line into Kremenna, because we got a video today, Matthew, from the absolute elite of the Russian armed forces. VTV, Spurkom Priget, un Pelishute Billy Bouquet. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, the clown jokers.
Yeah, the VDV. We got a clip of them supposedly shooting at the Ukrainians near Kremenna, and their riflemanship is immaculate, Matthew. Immaculate. Or as Kevin Banya would say in Seinfeld, they're killing it, Jerry, killing it. So let's watch the video, and let's see how accurately they're able to fire off these rifles at the Ukrainians. Oh, look at that! Look at the angle! This guy is shooting for Sputnik. He is trying to shoot down the balloons over the United States at that angle. He's not even firing over their heads. He's doing indirect fire on the guys 5 miles behind who they're shooting at.
It's a special technique.
Yeah, they put the special in special forces, I'll tell you that. Look at this guy! What's he doing? Look at this! Look at the angle! Adjust range for 2,000 yards, fire it well, and the guys are like 100 yards in front of him, 200 yards maybe. Oh my god, and also everyone's observing that their uniforms are super clean. That's also something good to notice, is that they are clean. Like, we don't see soldiers like that on either side anymore when they're really out there. These guys are as clean as anything. And look at this! What is this? Recoil management, non-existent.
Man, these Russian special forces are running on the ops, I guess you could say.
Yeah, they are. What in the hell was that? What was that? Oh, brilliant. I think that's a balloon. Start shooting at the moon.
The only casualty that day was a tree and a squirrel.
That's the end of the clip. Holy moly. Yeah, this is the VDV, and I gotta remind y'all again, this is the best of the Russian armed forces. This is their elite. The only other unit that's on the level of the VDV is the Spetsnaz. And if they're on the level of the VDV, the Spetsnaz, I don't think the Ukrainians have anything to worry about. Because these are the elite of the elite. The 155th Naval Infantry Brigade is getting on up there. Well, this is supposedly the best of the Russian armed forces. And that's what they are. That's the end result of the rigorous Russian training they go through, is this stuff.
And did you notice something? I didn't even see return fire like Dakota DeBera said. I didn't see any.
Yeah, I never heard return fire either. And so that once again throws into question, how the hell are they in Kremenna? On top of that, it's winter. All of these trees have foliage around them. There's no sign of frost or cold anywhere, and it looks perfectly fine. It looks like this may have been filmed in an entirely different part of the front.
Possibly so.
So with that, that's the end of the clip, but I still get a huge laugh out of those elite airborne forces that would supposedly even give the Americans a hard time when this is what they are. We're now going to be moving on from this clip in Kremenna and that embarrassment and on down into the area of Bakhmut. And so, starting off in the northern flank, because we didn't get any action around Bielorivka or Verkno-Kamyanka today, the area was fairly quiet. We saw a couple of things occur in the Soledar area, but before we get into that, we have to get into the frontline analysis, because the Ukrainians did push the Russians back over the past 48 hours in one area and lose some ground in the other. So going over the past 48 hours, we can see that in the south, the Russians were pushed back. The Ukrainians were able to push them back from the T-0504 highway and ensure that that supply line would continue to keep running, and it looks like the Russians may actually be getting pushed out of the larger areas of the tree line that they were able to hold the past 48 hours. In the north, however, the Russians were pushed back off the highway, and then the next day they spread out their front line directly across the highway. So it appears that the Ukrainians are fighting on the southern side of the M03, and the Russians are fighting on the northern side of the M03. This is starting to get fairly precarious, considering that the Russians have taken Krasnohora and are going to begin to threaten the ridgelines to the west of Bakhmut, which are the Ukrainians' defensive lines further back. But in the south, things have vastly improved. This supply line will be able to keep running, although this one has definitely been closed at this point, and the forces inside of the fortress city, Bakhmut, which is what everyone's calling it at this point, will be able to continue fighting as long as one of these supply lines remain open. So the Ukrainians have been able to ensure that over the past 48 hours. That is incredibly good news, and will ensure that Bakhmut will continue to hold. However, if we do see that the Russians are somehow able to counterattack and take the highway of Chasiv Yar, we will most likely see that a Ukrainian withdrawal from Bakhmut will be imminent, meaning soon. So with that, let's get on into the northern flank and see what's going on in Soledar, where we saw a toss cooking. Now, I didn't know that a toss could cook well, much like a shrimp could fry rice, but, you know, I was actually taught wrong. This thing can cook. It's almost like that meme, Matthew, and also the music is great. You know, it reminded me of something, Matthew.
As the sun sets on Ukraine, new life comes forward. Straight out of the fires of the volcanoes of the Marianas Trench comes a brand new form of bacteria.
But I'm going to have to mute that. I know it's copyrighted. We're going to be getting some lullaby soliloquy thing copywriting us from Orchard Music here in a minute. But the toss is cooking.
Orchard Music?
Yeah, Orchard Music is usually the one who copyrights most music on YouTube because they're... I can't say anything about them, you know, but still.
It looks like this thing is cooking. Call it the Grand Cook-Off because they are winning first place in the raffle. Oh yes, it's absolutely brilliant. The great orange flashes remind me of the fireworks show at the World's Fair, and the Russians running around remind me of the clamor at the Hindenburg. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely stunning. Make sure to get your first row tickets. The show will not last long.
I hope that was good. I hope it sounded good. It's the first time I did that. But this thing is roasting, man. Look at that. It's blowing up. Little pieces.
Yeah, it's literally a supernova plus, like the screen says. And what is this on fire again? This thing's going bonkers.
It's a toss thermobaric launcher.
Jeez.
Whoo, man. I think those are some of the missiles that are flying off, too. But with that...
Will it still create the vacuum effect, even though it's just exploding like while it's in the weapon?
I don't know. That's a good question. We haven't seen anything that looks like it's doing that. But it may. I don't know. Maybe it happened after this video cut off, or maybe it happened before. But that thing is burning brightly, man. I mean, like, we don't see a lot of vehicles that burn a white, bright light like that. That thing almost looks like an oil lantern. And
by howdy, let me tell you, that oil lantern is burning greatly, and you can get yours from Standard Oil.
But anyways, we're going to be moving on from this clip. And on into our next one from the northern area of Bakhmut, where we also saw the 2nd Battalion was hitting the Wagner unit in its last moments on the front, because we also heard, speaking of which, that the Wagner unit was withdrawn from Bakhmut today completely, the entire front line. So it looks like they're actually going to be split up and spread around a little, kind of like that guy at the Clown Motel. But let's watch the clip. See the 2nd Battalion playing around with their RPGs, just having some fun. See them firing their RPG. Ooh! Oh, wow, there's a lot of Wagner guys down there. Look at that. You can actually watch the RPG hit them right there. Now when you see the guys who got hit, they're turning around and running back. The rest of them are now turning around and running back. Man, they're having some fun here. You know, Matthew, this almost looks like they're fighting over that same trench we saw a little while ago, but the fight's still going. Because it looks like the exact same trench, remember, from the 3rd Brigade that was also fighting here as well?
It looks vaguely familiar.
Yeah, it's like near the tree line. It's got a couple of zigzags in it, a little bit. It looks almost the same. I think that this may be a continuation of the battle that we saw a couple of weeks ago for the exact same trench. Also saw Piano Man, sing me a song, you're the piano man. But he said this is the 3rd Brigade. So this may actually be a continuation of the videos we saw from the 3rd Brigade a while ago. And it appears that this is the... Oh, yeah, it is the 3rd Brigade. Sorry, I misread that earlier. For some reason, I read it was the 2nd Brigade. But it's the 2nd Assault Battalion of the 3rd Brigade. So, still, very nice to see. And they're still giving them a little bit of work up there in the Bakhmut area. Moving on down into the center of Bakhmut, we also saw that the commander of the Freedom of Russia Legion got a puppy and named it Bakhmut. Epic intro. When you see the little puppy he's got, very cute, very precious.
Всех приветствую. Помните, Золкин рассказывал и показывал собачку.
Poor little thing gets scared, it's shaking.
Всех пораздавали, все хорошо. Одного я оставил себе. Звать его будет Бахмут.
Домой заберешь?
Да.
Oh, it's sweet. It's a cute dog.
Он светленький. Знаешь, почему я выбрал светленького?
Почему?
Такое будущее будет у Бахмута.
Блин, символично.
Oh, look, it likes the ear rub.
У города Бахмут и у собачки Бахмут. Да? По крайней мере, мы стараемся сделать так, чтобы все было хорошо.
Oh, you see the mother and father right there?
Вот.
Oh, look at it.
Будем гнать этих пидоргов.
Those dogs are very protective over that puppy.
Добра.
But you know something I noticed, Matthew, around the midway point right here, is that this looks like the mother, this looks like the father. The father's like looking at it and noticing that the dog does not match the color of either of them. And when he walks off, look, I don't think that's ours. I think I need a paternity test on that one. And he walks off.
Oh my god.
Oh man. But still, neat little video, cute little puppy, and it's great to know the Freedom of Russia Legion is still battling there, a ferocious battle against the Russians, helping to defend the town and hold the city of Bakhmut, and also doing such cute things as adopting some of the puppies that have been born by the stray dogs in the middle of Bakhmut. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little clip and on into our next one in the southern flank near Chasiv Yar and the T-0504 highway, where we saw the Ukrainian forces moving forward as they were pushing the Russians back. See them moving up in the snow-covered fields. We can see artillery exploding in the tree line nearby.
Пулеметчик, давай нах, нас распиздуют. Я еще в Днепр хочу съездить. Суета, там уже пидоры, блядь, куда ты?
See them moving in. We hear some kind of weird sound. I don't know what that is. Sound now stopped. Artillery's flying over. We can see that this guy has a rifle for a marksman, I believe. Ooh, that was close. We hear some rounds popping off the ground near them. We hear them saying that they need to reunite with the 3rd Brigade. Rounds popping right over their head.
Давай, пошли, 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 пошли. На винтовку тащи. Я пойду с пулеметом поебашу.
Вперед, блядь,
на. Ебать. Все, погнали.
See them moving on. Dang, look at this guy. Mr. Big Balls here. Gonna shoulder his DMR, pick up the machine gun from the other guy, and just go up there and start handing it out to the Russians. And you can literally hear right there the fire like just flying right past him, bouncing off the ground, and he's just sitting there and just lighting them up in the trees like Rambo. Holy moly, this guy's got balls. Like you hear the return fire there?
Заходим.
That is risky as hell.
Yeah, that
it's
was
ballsy but risky.
Oh my god. Look, they're firing at him right there.
Dang, this is a hell of a unit right here.
Man, these guys get stuff done.
Давайте, 3 человека. По правому флангу продвигаемся. Мы будем по левому идти.
This guy is unbelievable. Get a load of this dude, because this guy is nuts. Out here
The
being
Russians
like
are thrown for a
Rambo.
bigger loop than they've ever been thrown for. You have soldiers walking at you while they're being fired at. That's that goes against logic. Their brains are fried.
The guy was just walking up there. I gotta go back to this part of the clip. This was the craziest thing I've seen. He's just walking up there, firing the machine gun like he's like a French soldier in the First World War firing a show. Look at this. That's crazy.
And it worked because he lived.
Yeah, and then he gets right in the tree line. You can see the muzzle flashes from the Russians right in front of him. He's just mowing them down. Look at this. I mean, that's crazy, man. Like, I can't believe this guy's got balls like no other, man. I can't think of anyone who would have balls like this guy. Someone needs to go and find his name and give him a medal for what he's done. Even if it was a small action, the bravery he just showed here is on another level. And he's just from a normal unit. He's just from a normal infantry brigade that's fighting in the area, and he's acting like he's been trained like SEAL Team 6. Like he's going to go in there and complete that mission no matter what. He's going to wipe out the Russians no matter what, and that's the kind of bravery that helped the Ukrainians to push the Russians back in the south and ensure that the T-0504 would hold, is guys like these. I mean, this guy has got guts like no other. I can't say that enough, because what we just saw, we've never seen before in this war, is getting that close to the Russians and firing at them like you're Rambo or something. Like, the idea of Rambo is fictional. Like, an idea of someone having that kind of bravery is in the fiction section of films. And this guy's out here actually living it. Dang. Crazy. You know, I'm wondering, Matthew, if the reason why he was moving so slowly when he was firing that machine gun is because his balls were dragging behind him in the snow or something. Because this guy has got to have some huge balls to do something that risky.
That's what that clink was you heard. That was the sound of
Yeah.
a ricochet.
Oh, man. That's clink. Anyways. We're moving on from that and out of the southern front, and into Chasiv Yar, where we saw a video made by Radio Free Europe of what Chasiv Yar currently looks like so close to the front lines. And so, here's the clip.
Я не знаю, вони не хочуть ніхто їхати. З ними дуже тяжко, а там
Wait,
Володя...
hang on, I gotta pause this. Stephen Lequer, or whatever, or however your name is supposed to be pronounced, says, calm him down, this happens all the time in this war. Would you do that?
No, it does not.
Would you do that? Would I do that?
We've seen a ton of these videos. I've never seen anybody quite as ballsy as that.
Listen, when I see something impressive, and I don't even care if that's happened 1,000 times, if I see something like that, I'm going to sit there and commend that soldier till the end of time, because there are Ukrainian soldiers watching this stream, and I think that regardless whether it's happened 1,000,000 times, 1,000 times, or one time, that soldier ought to be commended for their bravery and heroism. There are soldiers that watch this stream, and I'm not going to sit there and play down impressive feats of bravery like that, because some keyboard warrior wants to sit there and go, oh, it's no big deal. Would you do it? I wouldn't do that. I mean, like, come on. Like, be real.
І з двома дітьми не хоче їздити. Андрюха з тої сторони матом не посилає.
Оце отак сильно впервые. Таке, як ото бух, отаке було щось. Вон підіть, подивіться дом, який там, і криші нема, там нічого нема. Коли воно вже закінчиться, Господи, коли ми вже нормально будемо жити.
От Часового Яра до Бахмута приблизительно 8 километров извилистого пути. Но эту дорогу называют дорогой жизни, потому что это едва ли не единственный способ добраться до Бахмута относительно безопасно. Но чем горячее становится в самом Бахмуте, тем горячее становится здесь, в Часовом Яре.
Наш танчик пиздує, зараз буде сюди насипати, сука. Ні, Назар.
Ща буде роз'єм. Всім, ясно?
Вони, відверто кажучи, зараз близько біля дороги, там стабільні штурмові дії від них. Вони намагаються прорвати до дороги, само собою перерізати нам постачання і тому логістику. То в безпосередньому контакті, якщо у нас відпрацювали на п'ятерку квадрокоптери. Далі ми знаємо наш маршрут і наші дії. Тобто у нас практично без втрат.
От видно було обличчя їх.
Що тоді відчуваєш?
Не знаю, адреналін. Відчуваєш, я навіть не страху, нічого не було. Я не сприймаю того полонених розстріляти, добити, зарізати. Це дійсно не людяність. Ми не вони. Ми навіть одного оживили. Я думав, що він мертвий. Я замітив, що все-таки бронік рухається на ньому.
Не шкодуєте тепер про це прийняти рішення?
Ні, на все воля Божя. Плюс додавали акуратно. Тепер у нас на початках теж не було авіарозвідки. На Кремені, де ми були, тут засікли дуже багато. Я бачив наслідки тої війни. Я чого і боявся, що, не дай Бог, передати все в наш.
Lee, that T-72 was ripped
У
up.
нас буде набагато страшніше, ніж ці війни, які там були, які бачив.
Так от в нас страшніше чи ні?
Так. Саме гірше, коли ти втрачаєш підлеглих. Я ношу до сих пір. Сама перша група, яка в мене була. Всі прізвища. І всі тільки 300, 300, 200, 300, 300. Нас лишилося 5 чоловік з тої групи. Понятно, що ми поповнювали всі групи. Не знаю, більше за когось переживаєш. За когось. Ти відповідаєш за ту людину.
Як ви бачите, в них є ресурс і сила наступати далі на Бахмут?
Є. Живої сили у них дуже багато, техніки також, само собою, у них багато, хто б що не говорив. Але є у них сили наступати далі. Ми чекаємо підтримки від наших партнерів, друзів за кордону. Це нам дуже допоможе.
Будем держаться.
Вы не боитесь, что повторите судьбу Бахмута?
Это, скорее всего, так и будет. Потому что Часовяр по-любому не сдадут. Это одна из самых... Это самая высокая точка Донбасса. Здесь удобно ставить артиллерию. Боимся.
Wow, that guy to be a random Joe off the street. This guy was thinking in strategic terms. He's correct. Chasiv Yar is one of the highest points in all of Donetsk. And he's sitting here talking about, no, they won't give it up because it's great for the artillery. I mean, like, he's right on point. I was like, wow, he's actually thinking strategically here.
Одна из самых... Это самая высокая точка Донбасса. Здесь удобно ставить артиллерию. Боимся. Человек рожден, чтобы бояться, честно сказать. Но, тем не менее, надо держаться, надо выстоять это дело.
That's the end of the video. Of course, credit to Radio Free Europe, because it is something to see that the citizens of Chasiv Yar are more than ready for a siege, more than ready to do their part to help out in the defense of the city, and hopefully, if it ever comes to it, the Ukrainians will be able to hold the left flank of the Battle of Bakhmut, as well as they have been able to the center. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from Chasiv Yar and on out of the Bakhmut battle. And Matthew, for some reason, I can hear your nose now, like exhaling. Only exhaling. I can't hear it inhaling. And I know no one can...
weird.
Like it's weird because it just started like 20 seconds ago.
Let me go and bump that down a few decibels. There we go.
And breathe through your nose again real quick. I can't hear it.
You hear
now.
anything out of my snout?
No, I don't hear it now. And I know y'all can't
good.
hear it on stream, but I can hear it. And when I'm trying to like keep things running, it's kind of distracting. So that's why I bring it up. But no big deal. We're moving on from that and on down into the Donetsk area. The Battle of Bakhmut is still carrying on, and hopefully the Ukrainians are able to hold the southern flank and ensure that the supplies continue to come through on the T-0504. With that, we're now moving on into Donetsk and into the Avdiivka area, where we saw a clip today of the Ukrainians destroying a Russian BMP-2. Oh, that sounds copyrighted as hell. We're going to mute that. We can see the bomblet falling on the BMP near the rear, near the fuel tanks and crew compartment, exploding, knocking open the infantry compartment. Second bomblet hitting it. We can now see the BMP. Whoa, but good lord, that is a violent fire. It looks like an ammunition fire from the ferocity of it. And now we can see black smoke coming out, showing that the interior cab is being burned apart. Good lord, I have never seen... This thing's about to create a fire tornado right there at the end. Look at that. Like, just the strength of the fire is creating a spiral, and it's about to turn into a little fire tornado down there. I have never seen that before, coming from any vehicle. But it looks like they did get it fairly well, and that thing is roasting. With that, we're now moving on from that bit of news in the Donetsk
Oh,
area.
Captain Gristo 20. That super chat got me cracked up. That was a good one.
Anyways, we're going to be moving on from that bit in the Donetsk area and moving on down to Pisky because the Ukrainians have been continuing the fight in Pisky, and we can see a picture here of a mortar pit at work in the area. Now, this is a weird picture, Matthew, because when I saw this today and I put it in the news, I felt like it was just oddly familiar. Very, very familiar. And it reminded me of a war that had been fought against the Russians long ago, but it just looks so similar to this. Unbelievably similar, and I think you're going to be blown away with the similarity you're about to see here in a second. I found a picture from almost 90 years ago at this point. Well, actually, no. Let me think about that. It would be about 80 years ago at this point. From the Finnish Winter War, of some Finnish soldiers inside of a mortar pit operating their 81mm mortar against the Russians during 1939. The pictures are strikingly similar. And of course, it's a mortar pit, so it's going to function nearly the same way. But I thought it was absolutely crazy to see that the mortar pit is dug in. They're sitting around the mortar almost the exact same way, and they're just waiting for the fire orders. It was just so weird and so eerie because 80 years have passed. And you could go 80 years back in time, and this war would look just like the Finnish Winter War in some instances, just like that. And I thought the similarity was so crazy. I had to find a picture to show the similarity and show it to y'all, because, I mean, the similarity is uncanny.
That's weird that technology in this front hasn't really advanced very much.
No, not really. The British made 3-inch Stokes, and I'll show you it, Matthew, because you'll see that it hasn't changed beyond this bit at all. They made this mortar called a 3-inch Stokes. This is it right here. And everyone in the world went, yep, that's perfect. And we've never really evolved the mortar beyond that point. Every single mortar looks like a 3-inch Stokes mortar. And this was the first of its kind.
You'd think they would put like an iPad attached to it or something. You can like tap in like the coordinates and it like moves around like a motorized telescope to wherever you want it to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
But then again, that would overcomplicate it. It would break down and nobody would be able to fix it.
That's true, too, but that is an interesting idea. I think that is pretty neat. I wonder how expensive it would be, though.
Oh, man. With the markups for the defense industry, probably like, I don't know, $1 million per mortar.
I mean, like, what if you... well, that's getting into too much whataboutism. You know, we're not the acquisitions department in the Pentagon. We're just some streamers. And we don't want anyone to think that we've had 10 years experience in the field, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean, man, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But anyways... No mortars have really evolved beyond that. It is really weird to see, and it's also crazy to see how they're dug in almost the same kind of position, made in the same way, doing the exact same thing 80 years later. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news. I just thought it was really interesting to show the similarities in between the warriors of Pisky and the soldiers of Finland from nearly 80 years ago. And we're now moving on out of the Donetsk area because, of course, the news beyond those two instances are not that large, and there hasn't been a lot of frontline changes. Donetsk, of course, is status quo. We're now moving on out of Donetsk and on into our southern front in the area of Volodar, where we have seen losses have continued to climb for the Russians in this area, as their failed assault on Volodar is now entering into an even more complicated state as the 155th is routed off the field and been replaced by the 72nd Brigade, which is comprised entirely of Mobiks. Starting off with our first clip, we saw that another Russian BMP-3 had been destroyed right outside of Volodar. You can see the rear of it right there, and it also has this armor grating on the side. I forgot exactly what it's called. Everyone always brings it up and then I forget the name, but it has this armor grate on the side, and we can also see the turret there, and literally you can see Volodar right out there in the distance. That's Volodar right there, and this BMP-3 was blown up on the road leading to Volodar from, it appears, Pavlivka, if I had to make a guess. Let's go down to Pavlivka, and let's see if that would be the case. So here's Pavlivka. There's Volodar, so let's see if we have a street view. Sadly, we don't, so we won't be able to see if that is where it is, but it's still nice to see that another BMP-3 was destroyed. And it also appears that the snow has thawed in this area, and it's now back to, I don't really know how to explain it. Muddy ground, that's probably the easiest way to say it. Muddy ground that is cold, but it's not covered in snow anymore and creating even worse conditions. Moving on into the other bit of news that we got from the Volodar area, we also saw more Russian tanks being set alight in the area as well. You know what would be romantic, Matthew, on Valentine's Day?
What would that be?
Dinner by Russian tank light.
Yeah, I've always wanted that.
I've always wanted that. Cook a steak on it, too. When you see it cooking right there, it looks like a T80B and a BMP3 right behind it. It's a T80BV.
That would be the biggest like brag if the Ukrainians like pull out a ribeye and throw it on top of the tank and with their like steak knife like pushing it around.
Oh man, I'd be so scared to eat it though. Imagine how many toxins would be cooked into that thing.
It's war. A little toxin doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt anybody. Someone said it looks like Ohio.
Oh.
I can't make a comment on that. I forgot what that was about until it sat there and said, I was like, oh.
That's really unfortunate what's happening there, by the way. Sadly, though, it's kind of political for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason, train burning and polluting in areas political, so we can't really cover it. But still, didn't buy Russian tank light. Not that bad. And just like a relationship, if you try and have a date around it, it's going to be toxic. So with that... we're not going to be moving on from Volodar, where we see the losses are still climbing. And I now have to bring y'all down to Mariupol, where many sad memories were made so long ago at the beginning of this war. But we can see that the Russians don't care about those kinds of memories and will bulldoze them to make cheap apartments. So I'll show y'all this real quick. So these are the brand new apartments that Russia's been able to build in Mariupol. I mean, they're actually here. That's an actual picture of one. Moving into the next picture, you can see the brand new apartment complex right there. And you can also see all of the destroyed buildings still in the background, some of them completely burned out further down the road. Moving on into the next picture, we can also see them still working on high-rise construction projects within Mariupol, trying to make them look as frou-frou and nice as possible. Honestly, they just look like rebuilt. They literally look like Khrushchevkas just with a new paint job. They don't look that advanced. We can see right here, this one looks like it's just literally being repainted. Like they kind of refurbished the building and then repainted it. In the next picture, we can see what looks to me to be like North Korean re-education camp buildings, but apparently these are apartments. And then in the next picture, you get to see the really bleak realization that these things are in the middle of a completely destroyed city. Completely destroyed in every direction. Near the camera, away from the camera, to the left, to the right. Everywhere. They've been completely destroyed. And on top of that, these things look cheap as hell. Look how big they are compared to all of the destroyed buildings around them. They're dwarfed.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's what the Russians are capable of financially. They're not capable of rebuilding back to the way it was or even better with larger and more impressive buildings. They're having to build these tiny, sad little buildings because that's all they can do. And then moving on.
I just want to know what were they thinking with the colors on the side of that building? I mean, geez, white, green, and yellow.
Honestly, it looks like a psych ward.
The mind of a Russian. Oh.
Wait a minute. That's where Volodymyr is going after the war. He's going here.
Oh.
They're making a
He's going to create his new studio there?
Yeah, he's going to be sitting there yelling at his staff, put out the telegram announcement, please, in this thing. That's what this whole thing's for. But moving on to the next picture, we can also see them painting up one in purple and white around more abandoned and destroyed buildings. I'm sure they'll just repaint these and put a nice veneer shellac on it and then sell the apartments for overpriced rates back to the people who still live there. We can see another one here. We can also see what will be a future apartment building there. And we can also see the inside of them. And oh my god, are they cheap. Like, look at this, man. There's not even a shower curtain around this toilet, or even a place to put one.
Well, I have to admit, this actually isn't that bad from what I've seen in other places, but that's not saying much.
I don't know, because watch this. Watch this. You may not be able to see it in this picture too well, but when I flip to the next one, you can see the prefab panels that make up the wall. And that looks cheap. Like, you know, like...
I'll be totally honest. I don't like the Russians, and they're doing evil things in Ukraine, but this actually is not that bad on the inside.
I don't know, man. Honestly, to me, it looks like a council estate in the United Kingdom when it's new. Give it 5 years, and this thing will look terrible. I promise you. It will be horrendous. Like, you're telling me that the little submarine light coming out of the ceiling isn't horrendous and cheap looking?
I mean, it's horrendous. I'm sure you can hear through the walls of this place, too, just like at the apartment that we were in as well. You can hear straight through the walls.
You know, actually, to give you a little bit of information as to why we left that apartment and came back to our parents' house and lived here, is because the night that I said, whoa, what the hell? And we heard, like, the beating on stream. apparently the tenants next door had been hearing us the entire time. They'd been driven insane, and there was nowhere for us to run this stream. So that's why we're back here, and that's why we're not in an apartment anymore. But still, getting beyond that little bit of the story, this is kind of sad looking. And also, Matthew, you brought up that you'll probably be able to hear through the walls. That's what the FSB wants. They want to hear through the walls. They want to be standing outside so that way when you go, I don't really like the Russian government, you hear a knock on the door immediately.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and also,
and this time it's not the neighbor.
And also, I love that the light is also a tribute to the Kursk submarine disaster that occurred near Arkhangelsk, because I'm sure that those lights were also found in the Kursk. But moving on from Mariupol and what the Russians are doing there, we're now going to be moving past the Zaporizhia front, because nothing else happened beyond Volodar today in the Zaporizhia front. Also past the Kherson front, because nothing happened there. And we're now going to be moving all the way up to Kyiv for the speech from President Zelensky. And so, let me pull up the speech from President Zelensky. And without further ado, here's the address on no other day but Valentine's Day. So, here's the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні день чергового Рамштайну, зустрічі групи військової підтримки України. 54 держави-партнера. Вже 9-та така зустріч і маємо чергові сильні рішення для захисту нашої держави, для зміцнення наших воїнів. Підтверджено партнерами більше ППО, підтверджено більше танків, підтверджено більше артилерії, снарядів, підтверджено більше навчання наших військових. І як сьогодні звучало, Ukraine must be successful. І тут ми погоджуємось, успіх повинен бути. Звичайно, далеко не все про Рамштайн можна повідомляти публічно. Значну частину домовленостей і дискусій варто залишити за зачиненими дверима засідання контактної групи. Але я можу сказати впевнено, що базові тенденції залишаються незмінними. Україна і партнери разом роблять все, щоб держава-терорист програла. І щоб це сталося швидше. Ми бачимо зараз, що Кремль намагається вичавити з Росії увесь можливий потенціал агресії. Вони поспішають, бо знають, що світ все одно сильніше, але потребує часу, щоб згуртувати свою силу. Тому швидкість – це дуже важливо. Швидкість в усьому. В ухваленні рішень, в реалізації рішень, в постачанні, в навчанні. Швидкість рятує життя людей. Швидкість повертає безпеку. І я дякую всім нашим партнерам, хто усвідомлює, що швидкість важлива. Дякую всім нашим американським друзям за лідерство, за системну координацію Рамштайнів, а також за особисту участь у зустрічах пана Ллойда Остіна, міністра оборони США, і пана Марка Міллі, голови Об'єднаного комітету начальників штабів. Сьогодні ж я зустрівся з міністром закордонних справ Канади, яка перебувала з візитом в Україні. Тематика нашої розмови була теж, можна сказати, Рамштайнова. Передусім, оборонна підтримка, нова зброя для України, нові санкції проти Росії. Подякував Канаді за вже надану підтримку. І ми доволі детально з пані міністром обговорили, що зараз потрібно, щоб продовжити витискати окупанта з української землі. Активно готуємось до зовнішньополітичних заходів другої половини цього тижня. Як от Рамштайн задав тональність тижню, так і маємо його пройти. Кожного дня, додаючи результатів для України. Є сьогодні дуже добра новина від групи наших рятувальників, які працюють в Туреччині. На 9-й день після руйнівного землетрусу вдалося врятувати жінку, її дістали з-під завалів наші ДСНСники, передали медикам. Це дуже важливо, не втрачати надію за жодних обставин і продовжувати боротись за життя. Дякую всій нашій команді рятувальників. І, звичайно, сьогодні, як і щодня, я на зв'язку з нашими військовими, з командувачами. Мав кілька нарад. Ситуація на передовій, особливо на Донеччині та Луганщині, залишається вкрай тяжкою. Це буквально бої за кожен метр української землі. Маємо розуміти значення цих боїв. Кожен метр виграний там – це захист всієї нашої держави. Кожен день, який наші герої вистояли у Бахмуті, у Вугледарі, у Мар'їнці та інших містах і громадах Донбасу – це скорочення російської агресії на тижні. Саме там зараз відбувається безпрецедентне знищення російського потенціалу. Все, що ворог втратить на нашому Донбасі, він вже не зможе відновити. І це саме той потенціал російської агресії, від якого в керівництві держави-терориста очікували знищення всієї нашої України. Слава кожному і кожній, хто зараз в бою за Україну. Робимо все для того, щоб дати нашим воїнам більше зброї, більше далекобійну зброю і більшу потужність для наступу, що готуємо. І сьогодні ж День закоханих. Я щиро вітаю усіх закоханих з цим святом, з цим днем. І вітаю усіх закоханих в Україну. Разом переможемо. Слава Україні!
With that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 357 of the war in Ukraine. And of course, that wraps up our news summary for the night. Before y'all leave, I have to remind y'all that the special podcast will run on February 24th on a Friday, and also that will be our fundraiser night for that week. We will not be having, and I don't think I've ever made that clear before, we will not be having a Sunday fundraiser that week. The Sunday fundraiser will occur on Friday with that special podcast. We'll be joined by multiple guests who will help us to run that fundraiser and help us to reach the stars. It also will not be in our normal format. There will be a little bit of a difference. Instead of running it where it's entirely focused on the news of the war, we'll be talking about the entire year in reflection of everything that's happened, everything that we've seen, and everything that everyone has experienced. We also have some special segments planned that may involve some viewer interaction. Maybe you may have the chance to be live on air with us for a little bit, but still, can't say that for certain though. And also, I would also like to clarify this as well, because I don't think we clarified this at the beginning of the stream. The prize of the Ukrainian battle flag, as well as the fighter jet model of the Ukrainian Su-27, will be available to anyone that is on and live at that moment. You will not have to donate any amount to the fundraiser. You, as long as you're there and as long as you talk in the live chat, you will be eligible for the prize. We had to change that due to some legal reasons because we found out that the way we were planning on running it wouldn't actually be necessarily possible.
And also real quick, just want to interject this as well. YouTube requires us to publish guidelines for any type of sweepstakes. So I will be publishing a detailed outline for what all the guidelines of the contest will be, which outline the method that we're going to use to choose the winner. That's for legal reasons and also because YouTube requires it as well. So that will be published before the date of the fundraiser.
And so with that, I hope we've covered all of that fairly well. Make sure to show up. It's going to be impressive. And also make sure to subscribe if you want to be updated and told when that goes live. Of course, it'll be live at the usual time at 10 p.m. Eastern time when we usually cover the news of the war in Ukraine. But that night will be incredibly special. And I hope y'all are all there to watch that fundraiser, reach the stars, and also watch the first time we've ever run a show live with us in person. And so with that, we are now going to be, also, this is live, by the way, just letting y'all know. It's just that that's going to be the first time we're ever on camera live and in a completely different format. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into the question segment. We have some polls to cover first, but once we cover those polls, we'll be moving on into the super chats, and then after that, we're going to answer every single live chat we possibly can. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so for the final question segment, we have 4 polls to address. And the very first one is a topic that we somewhat covered the other day, but I did a little bit more digging, and I think there might be more to the story than meets the eye, but that's up to the viewers. And the question is, journalist Seymour Hersh claims that the USA caused the Nord Stream pipeline explosion. What are your thoughts? The most popular choice is the source is not credible, with 37% of the viewers voting for that. 24% said it's likely true, maybe possible. 18% said it's likely untrue or impossible. And 21% said unsure. Now, in this one, I'm going to go with the unsure option. I have done a little bit of research into it, and the guy is a Pulitzer Prize winner, so that's promising, but he has published some things that are somewhat questionable, in my opinion. So I'm not really sure what to think, but I don't think we should rule it out altogether. But Enforcer, what is your position?
My position, hang on, I just realized something. Oh, it's cheap. 1 second. I just realized that we actually just found the article on Seymour Hersh's website. So it's fairly long, but let's see if we can get a synopsis of it. hopefully not misunderstanding it in the process, and let's see if some of it sounds plausible. So, planning. Oh, there's that stupid thing again. We'll scroll that down. In December of 2021, 2 months before the first Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, Jake Sullivan convened a meeting of a newly formed task force. Men and women from the Joint Chiefs of the Staff, the CIA, and the State and Treasury Departments, and asked for recommendations to respond to Putin's impending invasion. Okay, so this is my first thing. When in the world was anyone privy to knowing that this meeting ever happened? Wouldn't this be classified for the most part? You know,
You would think so, but sometimes they have sources that they don't disclose. But there's always a little bit of gray area in that because they could be making it up.
Yeah, that seems a little weird because what in the world would the Treasury Department have to do with recommendations on how to respond to Putin's pending invasion? I believe that would have to do with other bureaus and departments more so than the Treasury, because that mostly focuses on domestic economics. But, you know, I could be wrong. Anyways, it would be the first of a series of top secret meetings. Okay, there we go. He says they're top secret meetings. What, you know, like, if you're going to say that they're top secret, you at least got to give more proof than saying it. Because, believe it or not, we actually had a top secret meeting with the President of the United States, Matthew Meade, about 5 weeks ago, telling us how to spin the news on the war in Ukraine. Do y'all believe that? If you did, you're gullible. If you didn't, you're right. We never had a secret meeting with the President of the United States. Anyone could come up with that. You know, as long as people believe what you're saying, you could say anything at that point and say there was a top secret meeting. So that kind of throws...
That's going to be 2 weeks in the gulag for you for saying that.
2 weeks in the gulag.
Yes.
That was also the home of the President's Foreign Intelligence Agency Board. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. What became clear to participants, according to the source with direct knowledge of the process. What the hell does that mean? You know, the direct knowledge of the process? That sounds so vague that doesn't even make any sense. Like, wouldn't it be better to say, what became clear to participants according to someone who was there? Or something like that, instead of knowledge of the process. That almost sounds like you're talking about how a case is going to turn out because you talk to a first-year law student and he's telling you how the court system works. You know, that doesn't sound, you know, I'm not trying to go through and deliberately deconstruct this. But, let's see. At the time, mild manner, former ambassador to Russia, agency working group, by chance. Let's see. Members of the CIA's working group began to craft a plan for a covert operation that would use deep-sea divers to trigger an explosion along the pipeline. Yeah. All right. So now you see, I'm going to say this. I believe, for the most part, that the U.S. did destroy the Nord Stream pipeline, but this story seems bogus to me already, because it seems to be a little bit too privy to too much interior operations. It almost sounds like a fan fiction of what goes on in the government. So
it could be. It could be. I think what some people found interesting about it is it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that the U.S. might have blown up the pipeline, but his story is not enough alone to make that determination, in my opinion.
Also, this makes no sense right here. This statement: a hand-picked team of Central Intelligence Agency and National Security Agency operatives was assembled somewhere in the Washington area under deep cover, and once again, for some reason, he just figured it out, and worked out a plan using Navy divers, modified submarines. What the hell does he mean, modified submarines? Anyways, and a deep submarine rescue vessel that succeeded after much trial and error in locating the Russian cable. Okay, I don't think this guy understands. Cable laying in the ocean is fairly straightforward and very obvious. It doesn't take a lot to find the cable, because usually there's a massive cable laying ship that has to sail at sea for months on end, along with several support ships, to lay any cable. So it's not like the Russians sat down under the water in Atlantis and laid a magic cable that you couldn't find. Everyone knows where every single cable ever laid by anyone in the world is. That's why we're always scared of Russian submarines and other people coming over here to the west in the North Atlantic and cutting all of our cables, because they know where they are, and it was such an obvious process laying them. That right there just sounds like fantasy. because everyone knows where the cables are at for everyone else. You know, like that right there is trying to make this a little bit too convoluted. Like, that's just obvious. Because hell, even in Britain, like if you ever watch a Tom Scott video, he talks about how there was a cable laid in Britain to transmit information to America. It's still used to this day. And back in the Second World War, and any time that a situation was tense in the world, this beach where the cable was the most accessible was completely cut off and under 24-hour surveillance and guard by the British military to ensure that no one could get to that beach and start trying to sabotage the cable underneath, because it was so publicly known where it was. You know, like every other cable. You know, like that right there kind of throws a wrench in the whole thing, because if he knew that much, he would obviously know that cable laying is a very obvious and clear to see process for anyone anywhere. So with that, in my opinion, I don't really believe him. It seems like a made up story. But with that, we are on to the next one. I hope I addressed that poll fairly well.
And the next poll says the former Italian Prime Minister, let's see if I can get this right.
Reconnection. Okay, it looks like we're back. Yeah, we're back. So reread that one from the top again real quick.
All right, so this one says, hold on just a second, let me catch up right there real quick. All right, so this one says, former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi blames Zelensky for war, and what are your thoughts? 46% said he's playing politics, 4% said unsure, 16% said that's very concerning, and 35% said I wouldn't worry about it. I personally wouldn't worry about it. That's the reason why he's probably a former prime minister and not a current one. So I wouldn't put much stock in it. But then again, it is news because he said it. So Enforcer, what say you?
Who was this guy, the former prime minister for which country?
Who? It's the Italian prime minister, the former one, Silvio Berlusconi.
Oh, who cares about what he's got to say? I mean, like, hell, he's probably just trying to re-enter the political sphere and, or something, and he's trying to I guess you say capitalize on something he thinks exists in public mind. I wouldn't put much credit into it. The guy's a former prime minister, like you said, probably for a reason. He probably wasn't that popular, so I wouldn't put much credit into it. He's just a random dude out there at this point that's just rambling. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and the third poll says, after recent events, do you believe China and Russia are quiet allies working together behind the scenes? 61% said of course they are, 4% said unsure, 29% said maybe in some ways, and 7% said no, they are not allies. Now, I think from what I have seen, with China launching a balloon and then Russia, they've been using balloons throughout the Ukraine war, but then all of a sudden they start using them at a little bit more of a faster pace from what I've heard. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think that China and Russia must be working together in some form or another, not just in a supply fashion, but also in a strategic fashion as well. And certainly if a war broke out, they would definitely be allies in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, I mean, like, if tough came to worse, the enemy of an enemy is a friend, and so I could see them aligning with each other, definitely. But right now, I don't really see that in my opinion. It looks like the Chinese are trying to stay distant at arm's length from the Russians, so that way they can abandon them if need be, or get closer to them if need be as well. So I would say that right now it doesn't seem like they're working with each other, but they are close. I mean, they're close. You can't deny that. But I don't think they're actually actively helping the Russians at this point, in my opinion. I haven't seen enough to show that, at least to me. You know, of course, people may be seeing things I'm not seeing, and of course, someone's about to go because you know how people are, man. Someone's about to go when I say I don't know everything, you know, so I may be wrong. Someone's about to go, he knows everything, but I don't know everything. So they may be cooperating in the background, but to me, it doesn't look like they are. It looks like the Chinese are trying to ride the fence until they need to make a decision. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the last poll before we get to our super chat and live chat questions says, for various reasons, will the U.S. and China tensions continue to get worse, or will diplomacy prevail? It looks like 37% said diplomacy will prevail. That is the most popular choice. 21% said unsure. 26% said China needs a lesson. And 16% said it's too late for diplomacy. And on this one, I think, well, only 26% said it, but I think all of us kind of know that China is vying to be the next world power. They're trying to take the place of the United States for basically strategic power, economic power, and they're actually accelerating quite fast, contrary to what some people say. So I think it is a concern, and I think that honestly we'll have to end up teaching them a lesson in some form or another. Maybe not necessarily an all-out war, but it's going to be an ongoing tense relationship with China. So I'm going to go with the 26% option. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the Chinese do need to be taught a lesson. I'd also have to agree with that. We're seeing that they're expanding at a very alarming and also a very aggressive rate into East Asia, Central Asia, and also into Africa and the Middle East as well. They've also, interesting enough, I'll show you this, Matthew. Foreign bases. Let's see, Chinese foreign bases. That'll be the best thing to put in. Chinese foreign bases. About to see something really interesting here. So, China. China has a base in Djibouti. Djibouti. Tajikistan, Saudi Arabia, and also Sri Lanka. And this is interesting because if you map those out, map these out real quick, Matthew, and think about this. Djibouti, Sri Lanka, and let me make sure I get the rest of them right. Saudi Arabia, and then Tajikistan. Do you notice that all of those are creating a semicircle over the Indian Ocean?
Yes.
They're trying, and this clearly shows that these are the first bases in an attempt to start trying to strengthen and control a sphere of influence that would be largely centered around the Indian Ocean. Think about it, it's perfect. If they start aligning all of the Eastern African countries economically with the Chinese, they start aligning Middle Eastern countries with the Chinese, and they also start to create this new Silk Road project that's supposed to be going through Central Asia and into Turkey, they'll have practically solidified a Southern Asian, Indian Ocean, and East African sphere of influence that would be practically unbeatable and completely protected. They would literally control a caldera, pretty much, around the Indian Ocean, and no one would really be able to compete with that. And also, trade would be unimpeded because they would have complete control of the oceans, which is where most cargo is transported, in between East Africa and them, and Central Asia and them as well. It's something that really needs to be kept an eye on because we can clearly see their growth plan already in its early phases, and something that we want to make sure to curb. So there's a bit of a war to be had here in the Indian Ocean, not really the South China Sea. The South China Sea always gets the most of the press. The action is really happening in the Indian Ocean. A lot of the world's trade passes through this ocean, and if the Chinese are able to control it, they are going to profit off of that trade massively, way more than one could expect, and they may even start to go toe-to-toe with the U.S. economy within the next couple of decades if they're able to pull this plan off. What we need to do is we need to strengthen diplomatic relations with Sri Lanka and build our own naval base there for submarine access, or at least a submarine based in Sri Lanka, because there is a very advantageous bay. And let me make sure I get it correct. It's not Colombo. It's somewhere, this one right here. The Kodiar Bay, if I remember correctly, is the only bay deep enough, and one of the largest in the world, where we could successfully build a U.S. submarine base, which would allow us to power project and also interdict trade if the Chinese and the United States were to become hostile powers against each other, and we wanted to start destroying the Chinese economically during a prolonged naval war. With a submarine base in Sri Lanka, we could ensure that. We also need to ensure that the Indians, not the Pakistanis, we are currently kind of in the fence with relations with the Pakistanis. We need to make sure that our relations with the Indians is greatly improved from where it is now. We need to get Modi over here because he's the guy in charge. We need to start schmoozing him. We need to schmooze the entire Indian government and the nation, start heavily investing in India, so that way we can also get the Indians on our side, because with India on our side, which is really the only competitive power in Southern Asia that isn't China, we'll be able to ensure that there is a massive industrial base for us to continue to get goods off of. They also control a peninsula that projects directly into the Indian Ocean. The ocean is named after them, and that will also allow us a large and very important ally going into the future that will help us to continue to largely interdict or stop China's economic growth plans. Not only that, there will be a small problem. We're not going to be friends with the Pakistanis anymore because the Indians and the Pakistanis hate each other with a passion, so we have to pick one or the other. But the Indians are, of course, the better option. Also, the Pakistanis have largely been funding almost all the terror groups that we've ever seen, like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban. They're doing that in an effort to try and destroy the Indians. Actually, the largest terrorist group in the world is actually inside of India and funded and supplied by the Pakistanis. So that's also an interesting fun fact that no one knows. And they're also communists too. The biggest terrorist group in the world is not radical Islamists or anything like that. It's actually a communist group in India. Which is kind of wild because they're also extremely anti-Islamic, but the Pakistanis support them just because they're anti-Indian.
That's strange.
Yeah, but it is a wild story. It's a crazy thing with geopolitics and the Indian subcontinent. But moving on from that, that's what we need to do because that's clearly what the Chinese are doing as well, and they need to be taught a lesson, and that would be the best way long term to teach them that lesson.
You know, I think that the Belt and Road Initiative is a big concern, but I think the larger concern is they're getting their foot in the door economically over here in the mainland U.S. They're buying farmland. They're doing a bunch of things that they shouldn't be allowed to do over here. And basically, I think they're going to try to squeeze their way in economically, and they may not need to wage a war.
Yeah, well, kind of, because if things go south, then right now would be a perfect opportunity to do this, is start investigating this Chinese-owned land here in the United States and start seizing it. Because considering that the diplomatic relations are already south, you could largely get away with that quietly, and there probably wouldn't be that much of a problem with it. Pay them a reduced rate, so that way there isn't that big of a diplomatic row over it, like half of what the land's worth, confiscate it back, and then have auctions to resell it to Americans and the general public. Or, sell it back to them and make a killing off of it, because we would be suited to profit off of that. But that's a fairly good point too. And also, Also, real quick, if y'all thought y'all were impressed by the whole Indian Ocean idea that I have going on here and what they're doing, make sure to vote for me in 2040 because I have many ideas like that. So, anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. That is a good point, though, man.
Also, another thing that I forgot to mention that I saw Indy4C and also Momoto say is that they are opening up those basically like remote spy bases, which they're calling police stations around the world, which is absolutely baffling to me. We allow that to actually be done in the U.S. That to me is insane. It seems like it's a lack of concern by the U.S. that China can actually get a foothold in our country by doing these things, and it seems like we're reacting instead of being proactive to these issues.
With that though, Matthew, I'm going to have to say we beat them to the cake first because the New York City Metropolitan Police Department has had police stations around the world in a whole bunch of countries decades before the Chinese ever started to have their own police stations in foreign countries. Like, I can actually pull up the map.
But do we have a police station in China?
Let me see. I think we may. Let me check real quick.
And not like an embassy, like a legit police station.
Let's see. 1 second. Let me find it. There's a NYPD office in London. There's also one in Singapore. Let's see.
NYPD?
Yeah, NYPD.
Like New York Police Department?
Yeah, they have international offices. Let me see here their list. Let's see here. And they don't have a list there. Let me go find another one. Like, see, New York Times right here. Solving crimes in other areas. Oh, God. Screw you, New York
paywall
Times.
again.
God. Well, let me go to CBS real quick. Let me see if we can get it here. Let's see. 8 people were killed. Let's see here. Where's their offices, though? So, here's their offices. They have 14 intelligence posts. They have one in London, Paris, Madrid, Tel Aviv, Amman, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Sydney, and Interpol in Lyon, and Europol in The Hague as well. So they have them practically.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so whenever people bring up the whole Chinese police station thing, I'm like, we've kind of been doing that for a while. Well, at least the NYPD has been. So it's not that out of the norm.
Also, did you see the sponsor on that page? Don't say it out loud, but did you see it?
No, I didn't. I didn't see it. And if it was
JD called it out in the comments. That was a strange like appearance by a sponsor on a topic like that.
Oh,
I know it's just
I can't.
like random coincidence, but I know.
I have no tongue to speak or eyes to see. So that we are on to the next one.
All right. So that was our last poll. So we're moving into our super chat questions. And up first, we have a $50 donation from Tony Fleming, who says, still deployed in Poland. Keep up the good job, guys, and Die Oppresso Lieber.
And thank you so much for the support. Also, it's interesting here that you've been deployed in Poland. Poland's a really cool place, and one day I'll go there. Because I always hear whenever people go to Poland, like back in the day, it apparently wasn't that great of a place, like in the early 2000s and 90s. But nowadays, it's really shaped up to be quite an impressive place, a really cool place to go to. So maybe one day I'll be able to get out to Poland and take a look at this beautiful, interesting country with a very rich history. And also, I hope you're having fun over there and you're hanging out and representing the Lee Spring Army. Let all of the local Poles know about the Lee Spring Army and tell them to join. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running, and also letting us know a little bit about what you're doing all the way over there in Poland. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Raphael Schneeves, who says, I have an idea. Ukraine should train soldiers in skeet shooting to hunt small drones. I was thinking the soldiers should be equipped with 10-gauge shotguns with long barrel around 25 inches and should also be equipped with HE slugs. What are your thoughts?
And I thank you for the support. We've actually brought up that point a good while ago on stream. I think it was several weeks ago. I said, why don't they just give the Ukrainian soldiers shotguns and birdshot or buckshot and just let them shoot it down? And that is something I think they should do. And so many people do it. I do it for fun. Like that's my go-to shooting like sport. It's not like rifle shooting. I kind of find that lame, sitting at a bench and just firing at a stationary target. Like skeet shooting is so fun, and I'm sure there's many people in Ukraine that are already familiarized with it, and they just gotta give them to them. Also, First Last brought out the punt guns again. You know, that giant boat gun shotgun.
Yeah.
Oh man. But getting back to this, I think a 12 gauge would do the job. I use a 12 gauge and I'm able to hit clays at 50 yards or greater with birdshot. And I think that if you gave some Ukrainian soldiers some birdshot 12 gauges, they could hit targets out to 60 yards, maybe. Like 60 yards vertically, they could just aim straight up at the drone, fire it, drone will probably be taken down. I have a feeling it wouldn't be that hard. I just don't know why no one's thought of such a simple solution to that problem yet. And then on top of that, I showed you all a video, everyone on stream, I don't know if you were around for it though, but I showed a lot of people on stream a video of a drone in Australia flying nearly 100 yards above the ground, and a farmer was able to fire off 2 shots from a shotgun and he took it down. So I know it's possible. It is possible. I agree with you. They should do that. They should start giving out shotguns to the Ukrainian soldiers in like 1 per squad, and just allow them to blow the drones out of the sky, because I think that will be the cheapest and most effective way to do that long term. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that addresses that fairly well, and I think that is a great idea and should be introduced into the Ukrainian forces soon. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Tiger2, who says, regardless of the rebuilding efforts in Mariupol, what do you think about the more than 500,000 Russian citizens fleeing the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts? Most of them are the families of Russian service members.
I think that the people who are running from the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, considering they're Russian family members, meaning they're Russian, they're going back to where they come from, which is Russia, which is what they should be doing, because the idea of them coming into Donetsk and Luhansk and living there, they're practically starting a colonization project of trying to turn the area into a Russian cultural zone instead of a Ukrainian cultural zone, which it really is. So with that, I hope that answers that question well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. Very interesting question. Tiger 2, and also Tiger 2s are a pretty cool tank. And so with that, I hope we answered that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $40 super chat from Colleen Emsley, who says, hi, yes, I'm still here.
Hey,
intruder not caught.
safe.
And also, it's good to know you're safe. But that's not good that the intruder wasn't caught. And that must be because of the rural area you live in. They couldn't respond fast enough. But he came back and saw I had a gun, but I did not fire. Police came in 4 hours, poured rain and froze on my vinyl deck, so I doubt he could come back without killing himself, LOL. Thank you both, and LSA. And Colleen, I'm glad to know you held on to the gun, because I didn't want to say that, because I don't know how the laws work in Canada. I didn't know if you're going to get yourself into trouble, but that was the sensible thing to do.
That was the sensible thing to do. I'd agree. I also didn't know how YouTube would take that if we told you that, so we were both like, yikes. So it was like, hopefully you make the right call and stay safe up there. And it's good to hear that you did. Because I was actually wondering about that when we got off stream last time. I was like, dang, I hope you're all right. And it's good to know you were. That's the most annoying thing about rural areas, though, and I know you're probably very familiar with it now, is that public services are millions of miles away when you really need them. They're hours away, and that may as well be inconsequential calling them. It may as well be lawless in places where it takes more than 20 minutes for the police or anyone to arrive. So I hate to hear that happened. I hate to hear that they couldn't catch him. But it is good to hear that you fended the guy off, whoever this person was, apparently a sick, demented person, and were able to run them off of your property and get them on out of there. So with that, I thank you for the support, Colleen. It's great to hear that you're all right, and it's good to know that nothing bad happened to you, but sadly, it's terrible to hear that the guy got away. Hopefully, I wish the cops had shown up in time to be able to get the guy and put him in jail for being a freak or a nut or whatever the hell he was. But with that, thank you once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and I hope that you continue to stay safe and play it smart, because you played it smart right there, and I hope that you keep that up. So with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $40 super chat from Dickie D, once again, who said, Richard D was a bicycle ice cream company, and people called them Dickie D's. Hello from Newfoundland, Canada.
Hey, and now we know where Dickie D's from. Newfoundland. You know, when the British arrived on this island, Matthew, they said, what should we call this Newfoundland? And then that was it. Like, they never came up with a name for it. They just called it Newfoundland.
Yeah, and then that little bit down there at the bottom got Saint Pierre and Miquelon.
Saint Pierre, Miquelon. I believe this was the only... well, I think at one point... No, I think I'm wrong, because I think... I'm not even going to go into the history of this. I know that the British discovered it. I think the French may have ended up owning it for a while, and then the British got it back. But let's see what a bigger town in Newfoundland would look like. Because I remember watching a travel. St. John's, I think it's like one of the biggest ones there. And let's see what this looks like. Wow, this is really developed. Like, to be out there in, like, what appears to be a far fringe of Canada. It's got, like, whole, like, clover intersections and stuff out here. Let's see what this looks like. Wow, this looks
There's
like...
one of those dreaded tanker trucks.
Yeah.
Those are a menace right now.
Oh.
Did you hear about that nitric acid explosion somewhere out in Arizona, I think?
Really? Are you kidding?
Yeah, the nitric acid Coke break, for real.
Oh my gosh, man. How in the world are we going to be drinking our Coke?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Apparently, it's the stuff's lethal. I didn't know.
Well, I mean, me either. I've been oh, by the way, don't drink nitric acid, y'all. It's not safe.
Yes,
you know, I feel like I feel like I have to make that disclaimer, because if I sarcastically keep doing this, someone will drink it. Don't not drink it. But this place isn't that bad looking. Honestly, it looks like I would have to say it looks like Utah. Like, I don't know why it's giving me a Utah vibe, but maybe it is giving that to you, Matthew.
Somewhat. This has a Birmingham, like, downtown kind of feel to it for some reason.
And nah, I'd say it's more like Utah. Like, yeah. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Dickie D, and also letting us know why you're called Dickie D after Richard D, which is a ice cream company. It's not Bunny Ranch, and that's for sure. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, helping us to keep this channel running, and also sharing with us where you're from. A Lee Spring Army member, all the way from the beautiful lands of Newfoundland. You know, Matthew, I wonder if we ought to take a gander at Newfoundland. Like a bigger gander, you know?
Like the dog or the place?
Like a gander.
Oh, like a duck?
No, a gander.
Yeah. Oh my god. Newfoundland and Labrador. This is Dog
where?
Island. Go hover back over Gander again. It says Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada.
Huh. And there's an F-101 Voodoo.
Oh, wow.
Wow, they
a
got
lot
some
of planes
here. Yeah. Welcome to Gander. You know, dude, they missed a good opportunity. They could have put welcome to Gander, come take a gander. You know, they could have done that, but they did. Ah, man. Oh, look, they have a PBY5.
That looks a little funky.
Yeah, it looks a little funky. Brass monkey. I'm trying to figure out how not to mix that up and say a curse word on stream because I feel like I'm about to stutter and do it. So we're just gonna pass that. Look, gander.
Tops.
What? Missing an opportunity. That's called missing an opportunity right there. They have a McDonald's, though, out here in the middle of nowhere in Newfoundland, but still, pretty cool. And also, Matty, I was just wondering if you ever wanted that, Channel Port Aux Best Guess.
Oh, you're talking about that place over there to the left?
Yeah, this... the people who actually can speak French are about to be like, don't slaughter my beautiful language. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it right. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Dickie D, and I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $40 super chat from Cindy Mitchell, who says, I am a little old lady. Well, not that old, I think. I worked in nursing for 25 years and met older German lady, and using that term loosely, brought up the Nazi youth. She still loved Hitler. Send to the chat, Matt. Oh my goodness.
What? Dude, that would be a German thing, you know, like after the war. Don't, whatever you do not mention the war. But still, that is bizarre to hear. I don't know how people could love Hitler, especially knowing what he did and what he ordered to be done during the war. I don't know how Germans could still love a guy like that. But then again, you know, there are people out there who will jump off a cliff for someone. So, you know, I guess it happens. But that's wild to hear, Cindy, and pretty crazy to think that someone would sit there and still say, oh, yeah, I love Hitler. You know, the guy who pretty much embodies evil in the modern world. I loved him. That's insane. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and sharing that interesting story with us. And if I heard correct, there's a live chat, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And also, Robert Durham did get the Faulty Towers reference, so that's good to know that somebody got it. Yes. So, the live chat question sponsored by Cindy Mitchell goes to Jason John, who says, have we discussed UFOs, balloons, and our personal airspace? And sadly, Jason, before the enforcer answers that, we still don't have any information about the two objects, and the balloon has been fully recovered off the coast, the East Coast. So we may never know what it was. There's no telling. The senators were briefed in a classified briefing this morning, but of course it's classified and they can't really tell us anything from it. So Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, sadly, the only additional information we have, and it's very short, is that whatever was shot down over Lake Huron was not a balloon, apparently from what some senators said after the classified briefing today. But beyond that, we still have really no clear idea or definitive answer as to what the object was.
And also, the only piece of information we did get from your favorite General Milley, he said that the first missile fired at the balloon over Lake Huron missed and the second one hit. So, you know, that could be a malfunction. It could be anything.
But you know what's a little silly is that, you know, we got to take what Milley says, Matthew, with a grain of salt, because he still called it a balloon, didn't he?
He called it a balloon, but they haven't recovered the wreckage. So how can you make that determination?
Well, he says it's a balloon, but then every single senator that came out of that chamber today and said anything about the object said that, based off of what they heard in the briefing, it clearly was not a balloon. It was something else. So, you know, there's Milley again, just coming up with stuff out of his rear end. What else, like, what is Milley going to crap out tomorrow that he will cover in gold leaf and sell to the public? I don't know. Like, he's really blowing me away with the stuff he'll just clearly misconstrue. Because I'm sure that the multiple senators that came out today and gave any information about it not being a balloon, which was several of them, I would say, what was it, like at least a dozen of them?
A dozen. What was the question again?
You know, about a dozen senators that came out today and said something along the lines of, well, it isn't a balloon.
Yeah, I heard several say that.
Yeah,
so the fact that their stories aren't consistent tells you that there's something that's being concealed.
And as far as I understand it as well, Matthew, this wasn't a partisan statement. This was a bipartisan statement by senators from different affiliations.
they didn't have the chance to talk to each other before they gave statements to the press, so it couldn't have been like a partisan thing.
Okay, yeah, so that means that this is all of what everyone heard, no matter what affiliation you were from. They're all saying the same thing based off the briefing. It's not a balloon, and here goes Millie again, just coming up with whatever, saying it's a balloon. I would even doubt that the first missile missed. He could be coming up with that. I don't know. Like hell, with what Millie says, I don't believe anything he says. The first one could have hit. They could have shot it down with a gun. They could have gone up there and prodded it with a bayonet until it came down. I don't know. Because Millie just says whatever the hell comes to his mind, and that just pisses me off. Like, just being honest with y'all, I cannot stand this guy. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. I hope we addressed that live chat fairly well. But that's all the additional information we have. It apparently wasn't a balloon, but we still have no idea what it really was. So with that, also, JJD 1913 said Millie's a puppet. Millie is not a puppet. He's pretty much a free agent and a fair weather spokesperson who will say whatever anyone wants him to say, as long as it keeps him in favor with whoever's in charge, whether it be one side or the other. But then in the background, he does whatever the hell he wants. That's what really pisses me off about this guy, is that he's clearly gone against the wishes of two totally separate presidencies, from one direction on one end to the other. That's not what a general should be doing. He should be following orders regardless of who's in charge and what he thinks of those orders. And then on top of that, he'll tell them one thing, he'll tell the public one thing, and then in the background, you'll find out years later, he's done an entirely different thing. Like, that's something that you definitely, that's a guy you do not want in charge. The guy is a snake to everyone. And I'm really surprised that nobody, either from the previous presidency or the current one, has had him removed for the stuff he's done to both presidencies at this point. But with that, we are on to the next one. And I hope we addressed that live chat fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Cindy, for sponsoring that question.
All right. And also, look, oh, let's see. Okay, so I put up this poll here. So y'all answer this question. I put it to where y'all can halfway bash us with the last option. You can say, no, he's fine. You were too harsh. I know some people are about to be clicking that one very fast. Like, hey, click. But anyways, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Dickie D once again, who puts in a 40 and says, Enforcer Matt, what is your favorite branch of the military? Is it Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, etc.?
I saw the original one. He didn't include the Marines.
I had to add that one, and somebody's gonna want me to add the Coast Guard to it. But Dickie just said Army, Navy, or Air Force. Personally, my favorite would be the Air Force because that's the branch that I would probably go into if I joined the military. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say honestly, in my opinion, I believe that. Let me think. I'm trying to think on this one. I'm trying to come up with an answer here. Yikes. Reread the line. I got to hear it one more time to make sure I get this answer right.
What is your favorite branch of the military? Army, Navy, or Air Force?
It's a tough one. You see, because the Navy is probably one of our most important branches, in all honesty, for power projection purposes. The Army is the one that actually gets the job done when we hit the ground. The Marines, of course, give that extra oomph and support to the Army wherever needed. And, well, really, sometimes the Marines are the only ones there as well. So they're very special in that regard. I would have to tell you, like, my honest answer, I'm not trying to make this political, is that I really don't have a favorite branch because all of them are very special in their own way and have their own special purpose and job and are integral to what the United States does abroad. But if I had to give you a real answer, I would have to pick the Army. I know the Army isn't the most glorious branch out there. It's not the one with the highest funding or the neatest gadgets. But the Army is something, for some reason, that I just respect a whole load and really just is, I guess you could say, the bulk of whatever we get done anywhere, it's always done by the Army on the ground. So I would have to honestly say my favorite branch from a respect perspective would actually be the U.S. Army. But I'm telling you, that's a tough pick, though, because the Navy and every other branch is literally right behind the Army. It's a very close call. So with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, Dickie D. And thank you so much once again for the support. And I hope we addressed that as best as I could, but I feel like I'm so impartial on that. It's really hard for me to even give an actual statement. But with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support.
All right, and everybody's saying Space Force. I classify the Space Force as like part of the Air Force, but is it considered its own separate branch now?
It is. It's almost like the Marine Corps is a department of the Navy. I think the Space Force may be a department of the Air Force.
Huh. All right. Well, it's basically just a branch of the Air Force that they've made into a full branch. But you know, maybe one day it'll be like a fully autonomous branch that has like all kinds of stuff, different facets of it. But right now it seems kind of a little bit new, so not really much to it, in my opinion.
Eric has said, "I disown you, Enforcer." Oh, come on, man! Come on, man! Like I had to make I had to make an actual pick. I couldn't go the diplomatic option, say they're all equal. I had to pick one. The Army, for me, just ekes out by a little. Come on, don't hold it against me, Eric. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dickie D once again, who puts in another 40. And thank you very much, Dickie. You're being very generous, and thank you for helping us keep the lights on over here and the hamster running. The question is, the Ukrainians should dangle food from their drones to make the Russians shoot and give away their positions. They would, trust me, they wouldn't shoot the food. They'd be jumping for it.
Oh, blien, don't shoot the food. Oh, blien. But I think at that point they would be like super jumping up into the air to try and grab that ham off the bottom of a drone. But I think that's a solid idea. Like put a can of something under it and see if they try and shoot the drone down to get the can of food, and then have them expose their positions. That's a fairly good idea, in my opinion. So with that, thank you so much once again for support, Dickie D. I hope that does address that comment fairly well too. And with that, we are on to the next one. But before we get on to that next one, let's address this poll real quick, because it's gotten 400 votes nearly. It's been up for 5 minutes or so, and it looks like the results aren't really changing anymore beyond this point. So let's hear it.
All right. So the question is, has General Milley lost the confidence of the American public, and should he be removed? 47% said yes, remove him, no confidence. 22% said unsure, 13% said he's iffy but don't remove, and 18% said no, he's fine, you were too harsh. And I've got to say on this one, I personally think that General Milley has lost the confidence of the American public. Even slightly losing the confidence of the American public should warrant removal, in my opinion. But he's gone even beyond that, and he's still there. I don't know why they're keeping him there. There seems to be maybe a reason behind it. But we obviously can't tell from our end. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't, on my end, I would agree with you and I'd have him removed, but I think you and me are looking at this from different lenses, because a general has no responsibility to the public. He has a responsibility to be loyal to the president and his decisions. And in my opinion, he is the most disloyal general I've ever seen to any presidency that he's served under, any of them. Like, the stuff he's done under the prior presidency and the current one is absolutely unbelievable and atrocious. That he'll sit there and a president will order him to do one thing and he'll go do the opposite. You know, that's not what generals are supposed to do. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States. He is not an advisor to the generals. If he makes a call, that call has to be followed, regardless whether those generals agree with it or not. That's how the command chain works. And the fact that this guy, under the current presidency and the past one, has sat there and clearly shown that he can be given an order by the president and completely refuse that order and do whatever he wishes, shows that there is a massive loyalty issue there, and he is a danger to the office of the presidency. And for that reason, he should be removed. If I was in charge of the country and I had given him an order to do something and he had flat out refused that order and done something else, he would have been removed immediately and replaced with someone else within several hours, because I would not have that. And no president should have that. There's no such thing as letting subordinates on such pressing issues at that level just disregard your statements. Like, what if push comes to shove and the Russians start launching nuclear weapons at this country and we have 15 minutes to respond? Are we going to allow that guy to sit there because he doesn't really feel like nuking the Russians back and go, if I have any say in this process, I'm just going to refuse the president's orders to fire the nukes? That's dangerous. And that's the most serious case, but that's dangerous on any level.
And also, I saw I saw Robert Durham say generals don't need the confidence of the American public. And that is somewhat true, but the thing is, though, Milley is the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is a somewhat of a political position. So he does play politics because of the nature of the position. So confidence plays more of a role in that one than other positions and other generals. But Enforcer, would you agree with that?
I would say that's fairly true. I would agree with that. And also, I saw a Midwest Vikinger say, would it be bold to say he's General McClellan reincarnation? He is General McClellan. He's oh man, I'm not even going to go on about what General McClellan did in the Civil War, but he is certainly the modern iteration of General McClellan. DB said he was not removed because the order was proven illegal. There's no such thing. If the president gives an order, that order is to be followed. And once it's followed, you then go back and try and figure out whether that was illegal or legal. You don't sit there and go, wait a minute, I think that's illegal. Because what if the president sits there and says, there is currently a Chinese fleet of aircraft on their way to Guam to start bombarding our air bases. I need you to immediately scramble air defenses of Guam and get a carrier fleet out there right now. And he goes, oh, well, I think that's illegal. You know, I think the Chinese have a right to bomb Guam. What do we do? Sit there and go, oh, well, he has a point to reject the order. No, you don't do that. You sit there and tell that guy, all right, you're removed. Next one, step up. You're in charge now. Send the strike group. Get everything taken care of. You know, that's...
I wonder if they don't replace him because there are no other people that they think are competent enough to take that position. I wonder if that's it.
If that's the case, that's scary. I'm not even going to think that. There's got to be better people in the army, in the military for that matter, that can take his position.
Because it seems like it used to be if somebody wasn't quite up to the job or wasn't performing quite right, they would replace them and again and again and again. Until there was a fix, but it doesn't seem like that happens, and it seems like the reason might be they've gotten so comfortable with the people that are currently there. They're a little scared to try out the guy below them, and they might be warranted depending on what the circumstances are.
But and real quick, I'll tell you all this because this is a small level, and this is why I have this kind of mindset. Back in the day, way back in the day, because many people who are familiar with channel lore will remember the Great Schism. And the Great Schism is largely what is happening with Milley, but on a much smaller scale that only affected this channel. Back then, people wanted to start telling me behind the scenes, no, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, and then wanted to start telling me how to run my own channel that I was spending all of the time and effort in running, and because they had been given a moderator position, they now decided they were going to try and threaten me to do things. And I found out after that point, it is very important to have very loyal people and also have a proper chain of command where if an order is given to do something, it's done. And that's why our moderators are exceptional right now. The moderators and me and Matthew are all on the same page. We communicate incredibly well, and a chain of command is well understood. You have to have that in every organization. You cannot sit there and have people below you that will clearly subvert and thwart your actions, especially when you're in the same chain of command and you're the one who has to call the shots at the end of the day. Because then, and at that point, he's usurping the power of the president. And let me just say this is a fair argument for anyone. Also, wow, Mark, you could just articulate your point well instead of just going, yeah. But imagine this. You elect a president. Your vote counts. Tens of millions of votes come in and your president's elected. And he is the elected representative of pretty much the entirety of the United States and also your commander-in-chief of the armed forces that you voted for. And you're willingly going to give away the power that you had invested in your vote in the president to some guy who was never elected, who's in the military, who's going to call all the shots instead, although that's the president's job. That is scary. You know, that hell, we're getting almost in the territory of Turkey with military coups. That's something I would not want. And that's my whole entire argument with this whole statement. It's the job of the president to be in charge. It says it in the Constitution. He is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. If you have people in the armed forces who are refusing his orders, I don't care if you argue that they're illegal or what. If they're refusing his orders...
Let me put this hypothetical to you. I'm not talking about the current president. This is hypothetical, so don't take it a certain way. If the president were to be, let's say, drunk, and he calls up the general and says, I want to launch some nukes, get it done, that's an order, would you carry it out?
That's different. That's a
How?
little different.
How, though?
Well, obviously the president isn't in the right state of mind and he's mentally unstable.
But
at
it
that
is an
point.
order.
Well, that's a little different. When I'm talking about something like shoot a balloon down and the guy goes, no, we'll wait, that's different. When you sit there and say something like, we're in a very tough stance with the Chinese right now and it's getting really tense, and then he decides to make a phone call to the Chinese government, that's a little different. Those things are incredibly different from that, because those are clear orders given in a clear mental state of mind that have an aim, and it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with the aims of the president. It matters that there's an aim in mind, and the president's coherent, and he's been the one elected and leading the country to call those kinds of shots. And then you're going to go behind the scenes and subvert them. That doesn't seem right to me at all. Because are y'all telling me? Some people who are disagreeing with me, I'm not trying to get in a fight with y'all or anything. So sorry if it's sounding like almost like warlike, where I'm like trying to fight you, but. Are y'all telling me that y'all would want a general, and let's say we're in the middle of a war, and well, no. Let me put this in the perspective of Ukraine, because this will really make a good point to all of y'all. President Zelensky's in charge, and he's obviously wanting to maintain the sovereignty of Ukraine. But a general down in the southern area near Kherson disagreed with that idea and thought that Ukraine should be Russian. So he had the border demined and then just retreated his army out of the Kherson area and let the Russians have it. Who's to say that that general wasn't in the wrong? He has the right to disagree with the president of Ukraine. So what in the world was wrong with what he did? He just had a minor disagreement. And so he acted on it. He was perfectly within his right. He was a general, hell, Zelensky's orders could have been viewed as illegal by that guy. Maybe we ought to sit around and have a little talk with the guy and ask him what he's thinking, what he's going through right now that made him decide that. You see, that is the kind of thing that I think is dangerous. And that kind of mindset from Millie is the reason why I'm saying he should be removed. That kind of stuff can happen.
And also, I have to say, we do have about 37 super chats to get to.
And that is exactly my point, and that's exactly why we have to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Dickie D once again, who puts in a 40 and says, I'm just playing catch up because I never donated until today. Jelly Bean Row is Newfoundland. That is St. John's. Take a look.
St. John's. And he said something about jelly beans?
Jelly Bean Row.
Jelly Bean Row. It's St. John's. Oh, let's see. Where's St. John's? Let me find it. St. John's. Oh, it's literally where we were. Let's see. Jelly Bean Row. Where's Jelly Bean Row? There's Paradise.
Matthew, we made it, Paradise.
But where in the world? Conception Bay. Watch out.
Oh.
Watch out. Let's see. Where in the world is Jelly Bean Row? I cannot find Jelly Bean Row. Ah, yikes. Let's see. Let me type it in. Jelly Bean Row. Oh, here it is. Oh, it must be because of the color of the houses. They're all like different colors. It kind of looks like that multicolored street in Charleston, where all the houses are a different color.
Yeah.
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 But still, thank you so much for the support. I hope you've enjoyed looking at Jelly Bean Row right here. Wow, look, the whole place is like that. And also, look, it's a Lego building. But still, thank you so much for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and I hope you enjoyed us looking at Jelly Bean Row. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Gary Robbins, who puts in a $31 donation and says, now that we know you enjoy Southern-style sweet tea, this will buy you a case of 24 bottles of the 20-ounce Arizona sweet tea. Go ahead and refer to the live chat. And also, Milo's is the king of, bottled sweet tea, by the way.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Matthew there. I would have to agree with him. Milo's is the best sweet tea of all sweet teas. Have you ever wanted a cool, refreshing... Anyways, thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for supporting us and making sure that we can have some sweet tea. And also, let's get to that live chat. Thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running.
And the live chat goes to Brian DeLaro, who says, I heard there is a crisis in Moldova, and is it true?
Crisis in Moldova, it depends on what you mean. If it's about the Transnistrians, not really a crisis. It's been going on for a while. And beyond that, I haven't heard of any new political tumult that has been created in Moldova lately. So, Unfortunately, I haven't heard of any, and I think the situation right now is stable compared to the status quo. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that addresses the comment fairly well, and hopefully Moldova joins NATO soon, because they probably can do it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Psyops, who says, hello, hello, sad and lonely people. Don't worry, Papa Psy will make you feel all better. Now sit back and relax, because here's a story. In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spent most of my days. Mwahaha. That was actually an innocent one, I think.
It's the Fresh Prince of Chester. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. I only heard the theme song of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I've never actually watched the show. But interestingly enough, Matthew, Will Smith was in that show.
Did he smack anybody on that one?
Keep my wife's name out your mouth. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. Yes, that was fairly tame compared to what you normally do. And also, once again, happy Valentine's, everyone. I hope you've had a fun time. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Psyops.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jesus UCSB, who says, you guys are funny, and love from the Mexican-American tanker, NAFO, Slava Ukraine, and Vilsec dude.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, Jesus UCSB, thank you for being a really cool Lee Spring Army tanker and helping this channel to keep on running, and also being a joint NAFO member. I think that means dual citizenship here in the YouTube world. So you're both an LSA member and a NAFO member. How cool! But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running and enjoying our channel. We always try and make it. Some of our critics say that we're immature. We could be deadpan, you know. We could be boring. But we try and make it as interesting and entertaining and light as possible, because, you know, whether I laugh about it or you cry about it, the war keeps going the same way, believe it or not. So we'd rather make sure that people have a good, enjoyable time with it, and that's also why Ukrainian soldiers enjoy it too, because they don't sit there and hear a crying fest. They get to laugh about everything that's going on and keep some high spirits. So thank you so much for enjoying it, and with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And also, before we move on, I'm being told by several viewers to bring to your attention that the Moldovan Prime Minister and several others have stepped down very recently.
Ooh? Oh dear. That sounds...
So it looks like the government might be falling apart.
Nah, they did that in Finland before. The whole government resigned in Finland. It's not that big of a deal. They'll just switch them out. The government will keep running. It's just that apparently there may have been a scandal that was found out, like it happened in Finland, and the government just literally just drops itself off the earth and a new one comes around. But it won't be that big of a deal, most likely, if trends show anything. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have another $20 super chat from Psyops, who says, let's see here.
Oh, that one, I know that one's about to be tough.
I can't read that one, Psyops. I know the enforcer said it, but sadly, I can't read that one. Maybe the enforcer wants to read that off.
Shoot it over to me real quick, and we'll put it in review. You know, I haven't seen Flying Was Flying here, come to think of it. I was just thinking about that, man. I was like, I don't think we've seen Flying Was Flying here tonight. Oh, yeah, I would say it, man, but the emojis give it a different kind of context. Oh, man. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. I know, I bet you know why we can't read them off. They're hilarious, though. I'll tell you that. It's hilarious. But I don't think we can read that off. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to, and somebody said, they're from Mexico, so it might be Jesus, and I think y'all are right. Jesus UCSB puts in another 20 and says tankers from LA are the best. Vilsec, Viva Mexico, and NAFO loves all.
And thank you so much for the support. And tankers specifically from Los Angeles are the best, as opposed to San Francisco, Birmingham, Atlanta. I'm telling you, the tankers from Detroit have got to be really good because they know what a war zone's like. But moving on from that, I would probably have to agree with you. They're probably really good. And I wonder if the Disneyland experience has given them anything. You know what's crazy is that when Disneyland was built, it was in the middle of nowhere. And now you can't even tell it's there. Like if it wasn't for the Disneyland park thing on the map.
Yeah, it's almost like he had some inside information, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Man, it's
He was an FBI agent after all.
Who?
Remember Walt Disney?
No, he
Or
wasn't.
CIA, one or the other.
No, he worked in cooperation with the U.S. government during the Second World War to make propaganda flicks, but he wasn't like a full-on like
He was an
FBI guy.
honorary agent. He was an honorary agent.
Okay, that's true. That's true. But he wasn't like a full-fledged one. But anyways, I thank you so much once again for support. And also, is it Jesus or is it Jesus? Because I'm interested now. Like, Jesus was kind of funny, because it's Jesus. But if it is Jesus, we'll make sure to correct that. So once again, if it's Jesus, say I got it right. If it's Jesus, say Matthew got it right, and then we'll move forward and make sure to correct that. But thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Aquatico50, who puts in a $20 donation and says China used a laser against a Philippine warship, blinding the sailors temporarily. The lasers were shooting down over Hawaii, possibly from a Chinese satellite. Do you think these events plus UFOs show a new era of warfare is potentially here?
Maybe. That's an interesting idea. I think it could possibly be here. We're already seeing the drones are revolutionizing war. Those, if the lasers are real, that may also be changing war as well. So I would say yes, if that did happen. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support.
I saw, let's see, Xmojo said J. Edgar Disney.
Oh boy, we can't even go into J. Edgar Hoover. Oh man.
Yeah, sadly not.
Yeah, sadly not. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and hopefully we answered that question very well. And this next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a 20 and says, "Keep up the great work and Slava Ukraine."
And thank you so much for enjoying our great work. We do try and keep it up the best we can, and we will make sure to keep it up. And so thank you so much once again for the support. Also, Matthew, funnily enough, well, I won't bring that up, but M. Savannah just brought up something that actually kind of happened like earlier in stream, like an hour and a half ago.
Oh yeah, don't bring that up.
Yeah. But anyways, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we will make sure to get to a live chat. And so what do we got?
And this live chat question goes to Jack Jones, who says, "Are Ukrainians not getting ATACMS?"
From what we know, they are not. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
Damn, that was fast. But anyways, up next we have a $20 super chat from JC Atkins, who does not leave a comment. But JC, thank you very much for that super sticker and the support. And also, thanks for being a longtime viewer. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support and being a longtime viewer and helping this channel to keep on running. Because those lights stay on, the power keeps running. You help me get Ludens and Ricolas. I kind of need those right now. You help me to drink water and get coffee and eat pizza. I can eat anything. Jerry, I think you're going crazy. You're going a little... Anyway, thank you so much once again for the support. And while you didn't leave a comment, I hope I addressed that fairly well, and I hope you got a little laugh out of that, hopefully. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Allegedly.
All right, and the next one goes to Captain Chris 1220, who puts in a 20 and says, "It may be hard to believe, but Enforcer Matt's nose breathing adds to the stream."
There it is.
Breathe on, Matt.
And thank you so much for the support. And that's actually a pretty funny comment. And I would, and of course, going back through this again, just to explain, y'all can hear it because the noise y'all are hearing from the desktop audio, which is also Matthew's Discord call, is reduced by 30% on y'all's end. So y'all don't hear it as loud as I hear it. But the breathing and stuff, whenever I bring it up, and I'm like, "Hey, Matthew, I'm hearing a little bit of breathing," or "I'm hearing reverb," is because, like, for me to create a formulated thought, I have to be able to like keep it straight in my head, make sure that it comes out right. So whenever I hear like breathing or reverb, it starts to like throw me off because I'm hearing myself like 2 seconds in delay, or I'm hearing like breathing and like spit and stuff. So that's why I'm always like, "Hey, I'm hearing a little bit of reverb," or something like that, because I'm starting to lose my train of thought, because I'm hearing it. But still, thank you so much for the support. We will make sure to keep Matthew's like spit and breathing noises are now in a Nesco World Noise site, so we'll make sure to keep them around. But thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Rob Hummel. Let's see. Thanks for the content. I've been listening off and on since before Moscow Mike.
And thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. It's cool to hear that you've been around for quite a while. Not a dead-on Lee Spring Army soldier, the tried and true battle veterans, but still one that's been around nonetheless for quite a while. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying us ever since before the times of Moscow Mike and the Great Schism, which actually happened on the same night. And I thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Psyops once again, who says, oh, this is what he was talking about with the poem just a second ago. I was wondering, I was like, what exactly was he talking about?
You mean a poem?
Poem. Yeah, poem. Psyops, we'll see. This one is a little strange. He's trying to sell it to me like it's innocent, but for some reason I don't believe Psyops. So let me send this over to the enforcer and get a review on this one.
All right, it's coming to review. It's coming to review. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's very laced with the innuendo. You know, it's a good poem. I won't agree with you, Psyops. It's a good poem, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think we could read that off. Psyops, you always make me feel bad because you send in support and then you'll throw in something like that. We can't read it, but I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. I don't think we'd read it off because it's just a little too laced with the innuendo, but still, thank you so much once again and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for being a longtime member of the Lee Spring Army, Psyops, and also being the funny moderator in the chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And Philip Fix has said in the live chat, I can't wait for the 24th. We're going to see Matt desperately staring at the screen for 3 hours trying to keep up with the chat. Philip, I'm trying to come up with a way so that doesn't happen, because that is probably what's going to happen if I don't have a good way of like collecting all the questions and donations and stuff like that. So I'm working on it, but hopefully that's not what happens. Otherwise, you'll see me a nervous wreck, jumping around and typing on the computer frantically.
I told Matthew, because this is probably the mode of operation we'll have to take that night, because it'll be such an exceptional and wild night, is that he may have to completely stop moderating. Well, I don't want to say that outright, but I've already said it. Might have to completely stop moderating the chat that night and focus completely on just gathering donations and gathering questions, so that way we can make sure that he isn't too overloaded, because then we also have to bring on guests and we also have to make special bits and segments. So
and we're supposed to chat. Well, the whole point of the podcast was to start, conversating kind of like we did tonight on camera. And to conversate while I do the job that I'm doing right now is extremely difficult with all the multitasking I'm doing. So sadly, I'm not that good of a multitasker. So I need like a bot or something to help me do my job, I think.
And also, we will send you a copy of that Psyops here in a minute, if you can, Matthew.
I got it.
I can do it afterwards. But yeah, that's something that was a little difficult. Luckily, though, Matthew was able to send the clicker over to me. We're calling it a clicker, but it's the camera option selector, so that way I run the ads, switch to camera angles, all that stuff. And y'all are probably wondering, what the hell's the ads? They're not going to be ads per se by sponsors. They're actually ads that we're going to be custom making for breaks, so we can bring guests on, bring guests off, have restroom breaks, stuff like that. There will be several of them, and they'll all be channel focused. So, you know, it's not going to be like a sponsor, like this is sponsored by Shave Your Nuts or something like that. It's going to be a legit, like, just thing we make so that we can have a quick little break in the stream. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we're on to the next one. How many do we have left, by the way, Matthew?
And let's see. It looks like we have 20, about 35.
Really?
Really?
Oh. All right, with that, we're on to the next one. Also, we're going to have to put a cutoff for the rest of the night because I have to get up really early in the morning for college, and I won't be able to read off any more that come in beyond this point. But if you do want to send in a super chat, make sure to send it in on tomorrow's stream because it will be addressed then. But beyond this point, we cannot. So do not call me an asshole if we don't read it off, because I've let y'all know. Wow. There's fair warning, all right? Because that one guy, you know, who sent it in literally as we were closing off stream said, "You ads!" You know, don't do that, man. because we're not going to have it. We can't have any sympathy. I got to get up tomorrow and I got to go through a whole day. But still, thank you all so much once again for the support. Thank you very much. And with that, let's get on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Ryan Becerra, who puts in a 20 and says, "Hello, enforcers. Have you heard that Vladimir Makarov flew out of a window recently? And what are your thoughts?" And Russians don't fly, so that probably didn't go well.
Oh, yeah, Russians don't fly. It was actually some guys from Ohio that first flew. But still, I thank you so much for the support, and unfortunate for him, I guess I'd have to say. So that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we answered that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And the next one goes to Cindy Mitchell, who puts in a 15 and says, "If you boys had a choice between General Milley or Ben Hodges, which one would it be?" And sadly, I can't comment because I really don't know much about Ben Hodges. But Enforcer, what say you?
I also would have to abstain from commenting because I don't know a lot about Ben Hodges. But if I had to, I would make sure to get apprised. And I don't mean to whine because, not having a clear replacement in mind, just whining, by definition. But if Milley was to be removed and then replaced, we would have to look through the current selection of generals that are currently near his position and find a suitable replacement that could hopefully do the job more efficiently. So with that, I hope that addresses that in a political way. Well, not really a political way, a political answer to that question, because I don't really know if Ben Hodges is better than Milley or the same or worse. So with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and the next one goes to Terrence Custer, who puts in a 10 and says, "Happy Taco Tuesday for the Taco Fund. I know we give them all kinds of intel, but do you think the U.S. is helping Ukraine plan their spring offensive?"
I think the Ukrainians are getting help from the West in planning a spring offensive. They've been getting help from the West the entirety of the war, both in planning, strategy, and also in equipment. So I have a feeling that that would not be changed this time around either. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that answers the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, to give a little bit of closure to me saying that someone should replace Milley, I believe we should be finding someone that has the character of General Schwarzkopf, because in my opinion, General Schwarzkopf was the epitome of a perfect modern general. But he's not alive anymore, so you have to find someone similar to him. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a $10 donation himself and says, "Nazi Germany thinning the Soviet population is why Russia doesn't have the men to just Stalingrad more of Ukraine. Ironically, Russian propaganda about Nazis helping Ukraine is unintentionally true. Lols."
I don't know how it's unintentionally true, but still, thank you for the support. And also, that actually affected a lot of Ukraine and a lot of Belarus, more so than the Russian Federation in the present day, because 25% of Belarus's population, 1 in every 4 people, were killed during the Second World War by the Germans, and that was also similar in Ukraine. It did affect Russia a good bit, though, all the way up till Moscow, but a decent amount of the Russian population lives in the area around Moscow, both east to west, and like an equal spread in both directions. So it didn't really affect them as much as it did Belarus and Ukraine, but you do have a good point, and that's why they can't do that now. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
CA Mountain Girl, I can't read that off sadly because of YouTube, but that was a good one. But up next, we have a $10 super chat from Frenetic Watt, who says Slava Ukraine, and also Hiram Slava.
And Slava Ukraini and Hiram Slava. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again.
And the next one goes to Chip Kerwan, who puts in a 10 and says the Institute for the Study of War jumps on Enforcer bandwagon and concurs with the LSA. Early 2023 Russian-Belarusian attack so highly unlikely that ISW will no longer report counter indicators in reference highly unlikely Belarus attack.
You see that? You see that right there, Matthew? You see that? You see that? People are agreeing with me now. People are agreeing with me because the timetable's passing by and nothing's happening. Well, we'll have to see, though. I could still be wrong.
Yeah,
and
we'll have to
they could be
see.
wrong, too. But we'll have to see. But it's good to know that I'm not alone now, and the ISW is backing me up. And from what we know, they've actually been fairly credible. They were almost, them and me were almost on the same page even at the beginning of the war, too. And, you know, and that's really biased for me to say they're credible because of that, because they agreed with me. But, you know, anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for
All
the
right.
support.
And yes, thank you very much, Joe. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from GivenJoy512, who I believe this is their first super chat. So thank you very much. They say, why do you think Russians are willing to share videos of combat footage which are so detrimental to the Russian side? Why not keep such videos from leaking out?
I think the reason why they share them is because they're wanting to show their family what's going on, but they don't understand that if they show their family might show others, and then that eventually makes it out of the country. So they're not really wanting to show how a detrimental side to the Russian military. They're just wanting to show their family what they're going through to get pity points with them. That may be more so why they're doing that. But then again, they may be doing it for the reason you're thinking, and it may be because they become disillusioned with their command and they're trying to find some way out there to show the reality of what they're facing. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support. And if that was your first time supporting, thank you so much for helping this channel out. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we get a $10 super chat from Raphael Schneeves once again, who says, Happy Feast Day of Saint Valentine, Bishop and Martyr. Saint Valentine was a bishop in the 3rd century of Rome and was martyred in the 3rd century. Saint Valentine.
And that is true. And I thank you so much for the support. And it is the day of Valentine. And so I hope everyone's had a happy Valentine's Day. It's been a fun day. It's been a nice day. You know, I can't complain. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And you know it. We're on to the next one. But thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who says, Aloha, the Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. He says, General Mike, Flippy Willy Petey, should consider its own role in the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What say you?
I would agree with that completely. We've covered that in depth tonight, Walter. And your super chat's coming around, I believe, near the end of that. But I would have to say, you really ought to evaluate his position. And if I was the president in charge right now, I would start to tell him, you know, you should seriously consider resigning from your position and retiring immediately. That's what I would say. But you know, I'm not in charge right now. I'll be in charge in 2040, and the situation will be entirely different. The faces of people will be brand new, and everything will be completely different. But that's what I would do right now. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, Walter. I hope that does address that comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And Walter said the general at the time was General Colin Powell, and General Schwarzkopf was in command of the Joint Forces in the Middle East. I got to say, Walter, when I saw Colin Powell, that is the one general I feel really bad for because he was done so wrong. That poor guy was done so wrong, but that was his comment.
I can't comment on that much because I feel like if we talk about that a decent bit, we may get into a political situation. But Schwarzkopf was, I guess you could say, the commander of the American forces during the invasion of Iraq and the Gulf War. I think he did a tremendous job. And you know, I believe you are correct that Colin Powell was, I believe, the supreme commander of American forces. But I believe Schwarzkopf was in charge of the operations in the Gulf War. And he still did an impressive job. Minimal casualties. We swept the floor against the Iraqis with only about 150 losses on our side, which is phenomenal. I mean, we defeated an entire nation with only 150 dead. That is amazing. So with that, I thank you for the clarification, Walter, and I also thank you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from KG, who says, I know you can't play the very copyrighted song Thunderstruck, but if everyone can hum the song along with me, this armor that's about to bust open some cans of whoop ass, that would be great.
Well, thank you for the support. Sadly, we can't hear everyone do it at the same time, but that would be cool. You know, that would be a neat project. You know, get like 10,000 people on a call and then make them all sing the same song. That would be cool. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Fairly neat idea. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Richard Philpott, who says, I'm thinking the UFOs are satellite drop proof of concept, let me send this one over to you because these days I don't know like what's acceptable and what's not. And I just want to make sure that's all right.
All right, all right. It's going over to the Bureau of Censorship. Um, for some reason, it's baffling me. I don't really know what it means.
Like these days, there's so many things you can and can't say without severe backlash. Like I'm almost hesitant to read certain things off. He probably means nothing by it, and it's probably innocent, but it has a certain ring to it that concerns me.
I would have to agree, sadly, but I do thank you for the support, and I thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. But out of an abundance of caution, sadly, we won't be able to read it off, but I still thank you for helping the channel to keep going, though. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cliff H, who puts in a 10 and says, thanks for the excellent stream, gents. And thank you, Cliff.
And thank you, Cliff, for the support, helping this channel to keep running and enjoying the excellent stream. I think it's good. Honestly, in the words of our mother, which Matthew will know very well, it's okay, but still, thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Rad Doctor, who puts in a 10 and says, thank you for speaking up against that country in East Asia and their atrocities. The fight for Taiwan is coming, and we need to get ahead of it and learn lessons and mistakes in Ukraine.
And thank you for enjoying that. We try whenever we can to bring that up as much as possible, you know, as best we can without getting slaughtered, because we will get slaughtered if we bring it up straightforward. So, you know, and Matthew actually wanted to cover on his own channel videos about China, and I told him that's dangerous. YouTube will come back and whack your kneecaps off. And then he found out later on that's true. They just whack your kneecaps off if you talk about that kind of stuff on here. But we try and bring it up as much as possible, or at least keep it in people's subconscious where y'all eventually look into it if y'all haven't heard about it. But I thank you for enjoying that. I think that's very wrong what's going on over there, but I can't get into much more detail than that. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from BC Skyman, who I believe has already gotten off for the night. But BC, thank you very much for that support and the super sticker. And of course, he's a channel legend, so we appreciate him very much. And he has been around for a super long time. I think from day like 1 or 3 or something like that.
Day 2 or 1. Yeah, it's like one of the first days of the war.
Yeah, he's been invested the entire time. But thank you very much, BC. And the next one goes to Mycroft, who puts in a 10 and says, is that a donut in your locker, Private Enforcer? Sorry, Navy Bias, LSA number 1, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you for the support, Mycroft. The Navy's really good. Oh, you know, like, the Navy has plenty of jokes about it. The Navy's incredibly important. Probably the most important there is to our power projection. But, well, beyond, next to the Air Force. The Air Force is also very pertinent to that. But I still have to thank you so much for the support, Mycroft. And also, funnily enough, I actually brought donuts to a class I went to at college today because it was Valentine's and I didn't want to be an ass. And I ended up going there with the donuts. And one girl, Matthew, brought like roses for people in the class and chocolates and stuff. So luckily I did that because I would have looked weird or like very rude if I hadn't. So yeah, I actually did have a donut in my locker today in a way. So that. Thank you once again for support. Also get the Full Metal Jacket reference. Pretty good. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have another super chat from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who puts in a 10 once again and says, me again. Merchant Marine was founded in 1775. It's actually older than the Army. And George Washington had private Navy during the Revolutionary War. And in World War II, Merchant Marine had the most deaths. Google it.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Merchant Marine Marine deaths. And how many super chats do we have?
We have 25. We have, hold on a minute, let me try to count. 15.
Oh, not that many left, but we still got a while to go. It's already running overtime. Let's say U.S. Navy lost. Dang, they don't give us a death count for the Navy. But it's less. It's less than the Merchant Marine, I believe. What? Wait a minute. I don't know. We'll have to give a greater dive to that. But I still we'll take your word for it. I do believe that the Merchant Marine did take more losses, and crazy to see, actually. And so with that, thank you so much for support, and also sharing those cool little tidbits and fun facts with us about the Merchant Marine. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Rad Strat, who says, "You guys are the best. I received my bot cup and handy for anniversary." And Rad, I am super happy to hear you got your bot cup. I saw that earlier, and I told the Enforcer about it. And that's really cool to hear. But Enforcer, what say you?
That is really cool to hear. I hope you enjoy drinking the tears of Russian bots out of that mug, and I hope that it continues to serve you for a very long time. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
That bot mug is probably one of my most favorite designs that I've ever put on the merch store, by the way. And it's one of the most simplistic ones, too.
Yeah, it's so cool.
But I'm glad you're enjoying it. But up next, we have a $6 super chat from Frenetic Watt, once again, who says, "Send bots to sleep and Slava Ukraine."
And we will send those bots to sleep. At least Matthew will. He'll axe them. And also Slava Ukraini. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, Observer, my favorite donut's glazed. What's yours, Matthew?
Glazed.
Glazed. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Technical Fool, who says, "Something for the pizza fund and pick one from the live."
And thank you so much for the support. And we will pick one from the live. And also, thank you for helping us to get some delicious food. And let's get a live chat.
And that live goes to W13RD guy, who says, "Is NATO running out of 155mm shells?"
No. That's something that has been going around forever. It's Russian propaganda, because they said we're running out of javelins at the beginning of the war. Literally within 3 weeks of the war starting, they said the U.S. is running out of javelin missiles. Guess what? We still give javelins to Ukraine. We still have enough to run our own military if need be, because we just buy more of them, and we have more of them made. So that's not such a thing. We're not running out of 155s, because we'll just order more and have them produced. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And also, to answer something, because I saw my mom getting a little bit of heat in the chat. Everyone was like, "What, your mom doesn't like this channel?" No, that's not what we meant by, it's okay. Our mom is famously known amongst our family for not being impressed by any food. Whether she cooked it or someone else cooked it, she's never impressed with anything. Like, you can get Gordon Ramsay's food and give it to her, and she'll go, "It's okay. I mean, I've eaten better." You know, it's just, for some reason, she does that with everything. So, no, she thinks the channel's great. She loves the channel. She just says that a lot about any kind of food. So, yeah. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, shout out to Suze K. Sullivan for putting in a 5, along with CK Bold, and also Sick Lid, who puts in a 5 and says, "White Lotta's in heaven."
Oh, rest in peace. They're gonna make a "Will Be Remembered" shirt for the Lottas. They'll be gone, but not forgotten. But still, with that, we are on to the next one, and thank all of y'all so much for the support and helping this thing to keep rolling.
All right, and up next, we have another one from Sick Lid, who puts in a 5 and says, Russia forced an African from Tanzania to fight and die in Ukraine." Sad face.
I didn't know that. That's pretty bizarre. I actually met a guy before. I believe he was from, where is it? Is it this country? I think it was Botswana. No, wait. Hang on, let me think. Oh, dang it, it was either Namibia or it was Botswana. It was Botswana, actually. He was from Botswana. Very nice people down there. Very, very nice. And I hate to hear that a Tanzanian, which is more up towards, I guess you could say Central Africa, ended up dying in Russia because they forced him into the military. That's unfortunate. But still, I thank you for support and letting us know about that unfortunate incident. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
All right, and up next, we have a... Hold on a second. Here we go. Up next, we have a $5 super chat from Jacob, who says, "Ex-Russian military bomber engineer seeks asylum at U.S. border, offers military secrets. Any thoughts? Probably that is why they are saying to get out."
That is actually pretty interesting here. I didn't hear about that. And if we get them, we need to comb them for anything we can find. Of course, their technology is well behind ours, but it'd be good to know the exact details about what these aircraft are capable of, if he knows it. Well, if he knows the certain bits we don't know. And so I think that's good to hear. And that may have also led to us asking the Americans to leave Russia. And so with that, thank you once again for support. Hope that answers that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And Raphael Schneeves puts in a 5 and says, my grandfather in World War II was saved by his whiskey flask. He was shot and the bullet hit his whiskey flask over his heart, which stopped it. I'm assuming that stopped the bullet and not his heart.
That's pretty wild, and that also backs up like the whole bullet in the shirt thing that we saw earlier. It could have happened. I'm not doubting it, because there have been enough instances of bullets hitting people and not puncturing their body that is believable. So with that, thank you so much once again for support. Hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Cliff H, who says, epitome, pronounced more like epitome, not epitome. No offense towards the Alabama public school system. Now, I have to say, I have to disagree with you. I think it is the epitome. I think. Epitome. Wait a minute. Epitome is correct. For some reason, my mind's not registering that. I think I said epitome.
Epitome.
Hang on.
Epitome.
Yeah, it's an epitome.
What, did I say that earlier? Or did I say epitome?
You said epitome. I didn't
Oh,
correct
did?
you. I didn't correct you.
Oh, well, Cliff, you're right.
I was like, yeah. But yeah, it's epitome. It's no big deal, though. Everyone makes mistakes. I've made a million. I used to call bureaus Beirus. You can ask Matthew. But anyways, with that, and I also used to call Israelis Israelis. But with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you for the support and also correcting that.
Yes. Thank you very much, Cliff. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Harry Knuckles, who says we need a fundraiser for night vision goggles.
We do, but sadly, due to YouTube Give, they only do nonprofits for humanitarian causes. We can't do anything for military causes, so sadly, there's no nonprofit we can support that gets them MVDs. But still, thank you for the support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Raphael Schneeves once again, who says, Enforcer, the United States already has a military alliance with India, Japan, and Australia. It's called the Four Alliance, I believe.
The Four Alliance. Let's see here. Does the U.S. have an alliance with India? Enjoy close relations and often see eye to eye on issues such as counterterrorism, mutual distrust of Pakistan's nuclear weapons program, and Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific. It doesn't appear that we have a alliance. We have a strategic partnership with them, according to state.gov, but that does not mean alliance, sadly. Hopefully, we can further our relations with the Indians here in the future and become full-on allies with them and help to expand and ensure Indian and American interests in the Indian Ocean. Of course, that's mutual. But with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And also, OCB said, somebody care to donate a Webster's to Enforcer Matt? A Webster's?
A Webster's?
Since when does people use that term anymore? Like, a Webster's? I've never heard anybody say that. Like, could you get this man a Webster's?
I always hear Oxford Dictionary. That's like what everyone goes off of now. But, yeah.
Or could you Google it? That's what I hear. I don't hear anybody saying Oxford either.
Well, anyways, we're on to the next one. How many do we have left?
Let's see. 6.
All right, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Philip Fixes, who puts in a 5 and says, see the AI flown F-16 in the news today? Someone get Jamie Foxx before it goes rogue. Moldova is also imploding, and check that out. Slava Ukraine and LSA.
And thank you for the support. Wouldn't worry about Moldova too much. I haven't read about the specific situation, though. It may be different than Finland. But Finland's entire government resigned around 2019, and nothing really happened. So I feel like it's not going to be that big of a deal with Moldova if it's a similar situation, but I don't know the exact details right now. But still, thank you so much for the support and sharing those cool little tidbits with us. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Jesus UCSB, who says, Viva Mexican Tanker and Enforcer Dude is cool, NAFO. And I have a feeling that they put in like duplicate super chats by accident, but thank you very much for the support.
And thank you for the support. And also, it's cool to hear that the Enforcer Dude is cool. I, too, think he's kind of cool, but he's also kind of annoying. Have y'all heard that shrill voice and that know-it-all attitude? It's like he's trying to run a show where he tells people about this stuff. And I think that's stupid. I think he ought to not know what his show's about. But still, thank you so much. It's giving support. Man, you know what I'm talking about. But with that, We're on.
I know.
Yeah, he knows. He knows. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Bob Anon, who says, perhaps Ukraine should drop food to the Russians. If the troops get more supplies from Ukraine than their own commanders, who knows what might happen.
That's true. That's a good idea. However, the commanders could still whip them in line, and then they're like, look at these idiot Ukrainians. They're feeding us so we can kill them. And then they keep on fighting anyways. I think it's just better to drop bomblets on them, really, because that assures that the end result is achieved. They stop fighting, whether they're 6 feet under or have 6 pounds of meat in their stomach. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, but that is a neat idea.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Godfather Y2K Gaming. And I believe this is their first super chat. So thank you very much, Y2K. Okay, I've been watching the stream since the beginning of the war, pretty close to day one, and it's about time I give something back.
And thank you for the support. Also, no one has to worry. Like, that makes it sound like you feel like you have to support the channel. You don't have to. You could just watch forever and never send in a super chat, and we'd be fine with it. I never want y'all to think that we're going to sit there one day to viewers who just watch the channel and enjoy it and like come up with like a little coffee cup mug that you can find on our merch store at enforcerstore.com and hold it out in front of you and say, ahem, pay your taxes. We're never going to do that because the channel's free to watch. If you want to come on here and watch the news, whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you be well off or not well off at all, I want people to come on here and be able to enjoy it completely free of any stress of either having to support this channel or anything. It helps a great deal and it helps us keep this thing rolling, but I never want y'all to feel like y'all owe it to us. But still, I thank you for the support, and I thank you for helping this channel out, and it's good to hear from another old guard. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Epic Trains Canada, who says there's a military aviation museum in Brandon, MB. It's a hangar where they trained pilots in World War II. Excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
It's a hangar where they trained pilots in World War II, and they still have most of their old trainer planes.
Oh, where is that?
In Brandon, MB.
Brandon, MB. Oh, in
no politics.
Yeah, when I heard that name, Andy, I was like, did you just get his hat? I was like over there at floppy. I was like, no. I was like, don't. Let's see. The Brandon Hills Model Railway Club. Is this close to it?
Oh.
Where is it again in Brandon?
MB.
Brandon MB. So he didn't like
Mount
say
Blanc.
where. He didn't say where in Brandon it is.
No, just said it's a military aviation museum in
Here,
Brandon, MB.
We found it. This is it. Like the tiger moths and all that stuff. That is really neat. Oh, look, they even have the old like fire trucks in there. I like this. And old Jeeps. These are post-war Jeeps, but they're still cool. And neat.
That's pretty cool.
And everyone's saying Manitoba, so apparently MB stands for Manitoba. I don't feel like that's counterintuitive, but oh, look at that. Holy moly. It's a tiny B-17. That's so cool. Wow.
Wow.
Really neat. So with that, I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And I hope that we've addressed Brandon fairly well. Now people are going to be going, no politics. You said no politics ever. It's a town. Calm down. It's a town. Calm down. You calm down. It's a misinput. But anyways, wait a minute. What the hell was that? Okay, I thought that was something totally different right here. I was like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here?
Take it easy. It's just a storm.
Dude.
Somebody's breaking
Wait,
in.
hang on, man. Let me do it right. Let me crack my knuckles here. Sounds like someone's breaking in. It's just a storm, Dick. Sit down. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Landlover, who says, good work on the fundraisers. And we also have a 2 from Dupper Bob, who says, Slava Ukraine.
And thank y'all to both of y'all for the support, because without y'all, this wouldn't be possible. So thank y'all once again, and we are on to the next one. And also, Slava Ukraini.
And that is our last super chat of the night. So, Enforcer, how many live chats do you want? And we do have the Morse code.
We can only take 3 due to how overtime it is. And of course, the Morse code does not count. But beyond that, we'll only take 3. Sadly, I hate to say that though.
All right, so up first, the Morse code tonight was solved by JP's RC's Mark Hodges and C. Fay. They said the Morse code says, make sure to compete in the flag competition on Discord, Slava LSA and Slava Ukraine, Igor.
Slava Ukraini, and y'all did get it correct. Make sure to compete in the flag competition on Discord. I want to make sure we have as many options to pick from, and the winner of that competition isn't Nutters, because well, that actually sounds bad. It sounds like I have a vendetta against Nutters. Nutters is amazing with what he's able to do, but Nutters is like the only one throwing in designs right now, and I can tell y'all, his designs are good, and he's thrown in so many, he's pretty much going to win. I want to make sure that we actually have a fair playing field, and Nutters is not like stacking it in completely in his favor, although he's done an amazing job of doing that. His designs are over the top. So make sure to compete in that flag competition, so that way we have dozens, if not hundreds of flags to pick from, because I want the Lee Spring Army to be involved in this competition. It's a really cool one, and I want to make sure that it reaches out to as many people as possible. You can find it on the new Discord, and the link to that is below. Also, by the way, Nutters, your flag designs are like on fleek. Have you seen them, Matthew?
I haven't.
They are good.
I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, they're amazing. So with that, I hope we addressed the Morse code message fairly well. Just letting everyone know, Nutters about to win that one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bip Bip, who says, Enforcer, what do you think about Zelensky calling to ban Russians from the Olympics? I personally agree.
I personally agree as well, because not only are they juicers and druggies, but they're also committing war crimes, and that's not a good thing to have a nation represented in the Olympics that is committing war crimes. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well, and we're on to the second to last one of the night.
And this one goes to Enoch, who says, Enoch, who says, do you think Volodymyr, I guess he's referring to Zelensky, would flee Ukraine if Russia pushed all the way into Kyiv? Also, would Putin publicly execute him like the U.S. did Saddam Hussein?
No, I don't think you have him publicly executed, because the death penalty supposedly doesn't exist in Russia, so that would be a bad look to say the death penalty doesn't exist and then execute someone publicly. And then also, the second thing is that no, he wouldn't flee, because the Russians literally got right in the suburbs of Kyiv at the beginning of the war, near Obolon and Troishina, and Zelensky never left. He stayed in Kyiv, so I would feel like he probably wouldn't do that if they made it to Kyiv, because they already have 12 months ago. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well, and we are on to the final one of the night. So, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that question goes to Buck Naked. I got had by it again. He says, do you think Ukrainian men who refuse to defend their country but still wish to have freedom and live in Ukraine after the war should be allowed to, or be shunned from the Ukrainian society?
Sadly, this sounds kind of harsh, but if you live in a country, you have a inherent duty to defend it. If you are from Ukraine and you live in Ukraine, like for example, I live in the United States. If a war happened and I was called up in a draft, that's my duty. I have to serve. If you sit there and dodge a draft and then you run off to a foreign country, then try and come back after the war, you ought to be shunned. It was your responsibility to ensure that your nation was defended. It's your home. Like if a burglar came into my house, I'm not running out of my house and into the next door neighbor's house to live there. I'm going to fight for my own house. That's what you have to do for your country too. Your country is your house. So you have to fight for it. So if a Ukrainian soldier got called up to serve in his military and then he ran away, that's cowardice, one. And second, you're betraying your nation for your own sake, and that's selfish. So for those reasons, I feel like they shouldn't be accepted back into Ukrainian society. They should be ostracized, because brave men and women fought and died and defended the country, so that way they'd have the ability to come back to it as a coward. So that would be my opinion on it. A little harsh, but that's the way I see it. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. I thank everyone so much tonight for coming. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment, and also make sure to subscribe, because all those things help this channel to keep growing and keep running, and also help us to spread the word of what we're doing here. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for the support. Take care. Good night. I'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and Slava Ukraini.
Love you, Ukraine. Good night.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького